What if I told you that the very things we've created to make life better are secretly making it worse? That our solutions have become our problems, our progress has become our prison, and our greatest achievements might be our most beautiful failures? The productivity paradox. Imagine for a moment that you're standing in the center of a vast library. The shelves stretch endlessly upward, filled with every book ever written about efficiency, time management, and getting things done. The air hums with the quiet energy of accumulated wisdom. Yet here's what strikes you as peculiar. Despite having access to more knowledge about productivity than any generation in human history, despite carrying devices more powerful than the computers that sent humans to the moon, despite having apps and systems and methodologies designed to streamline every moment of our existence, we somehow feel busier, more overwhelmed, and less accomplished than ever before. This is the heart of what we call the productivity paradox, and it whispers a question that echoes through the corridors of modern life. How is it possible that our relentless pursuit of doing more has left us feeling like we're accomplishing less? Let's walk together through this strange landscape where progress seems to chase its own tail, where every solution becomes the seed of a new problem, where the very tools designed to free us from work have somehow multiplied the work itself. The paradox begins innocently enough. Picture the invention of email in the 1970s, a marvel of human ingenuity that promised to revolutionize communication. No longer would important messages take days or weeks to reach their destination. No longer would we be bound by the constraints of physical mail or the interruptions of telephone calls. Email would make us more efficient, more connected, more productive. And indeed, it did. For a while. But something curious happened as email spread across offices and homes like morning sunlight across a meadow. The very ease of sending messages led to more messages being sent. The convenience of instant communication created an expectation of instant response. What had once been a tool to reduce the burden of correspondence suddenly became a constant stream of demands on our attention. The average office worker now receives over 100 emails per day, spending roughly 2.5 hours simply managing their inbox. The tool, designed to save time, had somehow consumed it instead. This pattern repeats itself with almost hypnotic consistency across the landscape of modern productivity. Consider the smartphone, that pocket-sized miracle that puts the entirety of human knowledge at our fingertips. It allows us to work from anywhere, to stay connected with colleagues and clients across time zones, to access documents and applications that would have required entire rooms full of equipment just decades ago. Yet studies show that the average person checks their smartphone over 150 times per day, spending more than 7 hours staring at screens. The device meant to enhance our productivity has become perhaps the greatest source of distraction in human history. Or think about the proliferation of productivity software itself. There are now thousands of apps designed to help us organize our tasks, manage our time, track our habits, and optimize our workflows. We have calendar applications that sync across devices, note-taking systems that promise to capture every thought, project management platforms that break down complex endeavors into manageable chunks. Yet, many people spend more time managing these systems than actually using them productively. They become productivity tourists, constantly searching for the perfect app, the ultimate method, the final solution to their organizational challenges. The paradox extends beyond individual tools to encompass entire philosophies of work. Take the concept of multitasking, once heralded as the key to modern efficiency. The ability to juggle multiple tasks simultaneously was seen as a superpower, a way to squeeze more productivity from every moment. Companies began to explicitly seek out multitaskers, and job descriptions proudly demanded the ability to wear many hats at once. But neuroscience has revealed a troubling truth lurking beneath this apparent efficiency. The human brain doesn't actually multitask in the way we imagine. Instead, it rapidly switches attention between tasks, a process that comes with hidden costs. Each transition requires a moment of reorientation, a brief pause as our minds shift gears. These tiny delays accumulate throughout the day like interest on a loan, creating what researchers call switching costs. Studies suggest that multitasking can reduce overall productivity by as much as 40%. The very practice meant to help us do more was actually helping us accomplish less. Perhaps nowhere is the productivity paradox more visible than in the modern office environment itself. Open office designs were introduced with the promise of increasing collaboration and communication. By removing the barriers between workers, companies hope to create more dynamic, efficient workspaces where ideas could flow freely and projects could move more quickly. The cubicle walls came down, and suddenly everyone could see everyone else, talk to everyone else, work together seamlessly. What actually happened was quite different. Without physical barriers to provide focus and privacy, workers found themselves constantly interrupted by conversations, phone calls, and the general bustle of office life. The average office worker is now interrupted every 11 minutes, and it takes approximately 23 minutes to fully refocus on a task after an interruption. The open office, designed to boost productivity, had instead created an environment of perpetual distraction where deep, focused work became increasingly difficult to achieve. The paradox reveals itself in subtler ways as well. Consider how the measurement of productivity has evolved alongside our tools for creating it. In previous eras, productivity was often tied to tangible outputs. How many widgets were manufactured, how many acres were farmed, how many letters were typed. But as work has become more knowledge-based and digital, we've begun measuring productivity through activity rather than achievement. We count emails sent, meetings attended, hours logged, tasks checked off lists. Yet being busy is not the same as being productive, just as motion is not the same as progress. This shift toward measuring activity rather than results has created what some observers call productivity theater, where workers feel compelled to demonstrate their busyness rather than their effectiveness. They send emails late at night to show dedication, attend unnecessary meetings to maintain visibility, create elaborate to-do lists that prioritize the appearance of organization over actual accomplishment. The metrics meant to improve productivity have sometimes encouraged its opposite. The psychological dimensions of the productivity paradox are perhaps even more intriguing than its technological ones. As our tools for getting things done have proliferated, so too has our anxiety about not doing enough. The very abundance of productivity advice creates a kind of meta-problem. We now have to be productive about being productive. We read books about productivity, listen to podcasts about optimization, attend seminars about time management. The pursuit of efficiency has become a full-time job in itself. This creates what psychologists recognize as choice paralysis. When faced with too many options for how to organize our lives and work, we often end up paralyzed by the very abundance of possibilities. The person seeking the perfect productivity system may spend weeks researching methodologies, comparing features, and setting up elaborate workflows, all while the actual work sits waiting. The solution becomes the problem. There's also the curious phenomenon of productivity guilt, where people feel anxious about moments of rest or reflection. In a culture that equates worth with output, taking time to simply think, to let the mind wander, to engage in seemingly unproductive activities like daydreaming or casual conversation begins to feel indulgent or wasteful. Yet research consistently shows that these apparently unproductive moments are often when our most creative and innovative thinking occurs. The pressure to be constantly productive may actually inhibit the very insights and breakthroughs that true productivity should enable. The productivity paradox also manifests in our relationship with time itself. Despite having devices that can track our minutes and seconds with atomic precision, despite having scheduling software that can optimize our calendars down to 15-minute intervals, many people report feeling like they have less time than ever before. Time seems to move faster. Days blur together, weeks disappear without clear accomplishment. The very tools meant to help us master time have somehow made us feel more enslaved by it. Part of this temporal confusion stems from what researchers call attention residue. When we rapidly shift between tasks and tools throughout the day, part of our mental energy remains attached to previous activities. We may be physically present in a meeting while mentally still processing the email we just read or planning the presentation we need to create afterward. This fragmentation of attention creates a feeling that we're never fully present anywhere, never completely focused on anything, never truly productive despite constant activity. The paradox extends into our personal lives as well. Fitness trackers promise to optimize our health and wellness, yet many users report feeling anxious when they don't meet their daily step goals or close their activity rings. Meditation apps offer guided paths to inner peace, but the gamification of mindfulness can turn contemplative practice into another item on the productivity checklist. Even our leisure activities become subject to optimization, with reading apps that track pages per minute and hobby platforms that measure progress and achievement. What emerges from this examination is a deeper question about the nature of productivity itself. Perhaps our modern understanding of the concept is fundamentally flawed. We've inherited an industrial model of productivity that emphasizes speed, efficiency, and output, applying it to knowledge work and creative endeavors where different principles might be more appropriate. A writer staring out the window may appear unproductive, but that apparent idleness might be when the crucial insight emerges. A programmer taking a long walk might seem to be avoiding work, but the change of environment could provide the perspective needed to solve a complex problem. The productivity paradox suggests that our relentless focus on doing more and doing it faster may have obscured more fundamental questions about what's worth doing at all. In our rush to optimize every moment, we may have lost sight of the difference between efficiency and effectiveness, between being busy and being purposeful, between motion and meaningful progress. Consider the possibility that true productivity isn't about cramming more activities into less time, but about creating space for what truly matters. It might involve saying no more often than yes, choosing depth over breadth, prioritizing impact over activity. This kind of productivity can't be measured by apps or optimized by algorithms. It requires the kind of reflection and judgment that artificial intelligence cannot provide and that productivity systems often discourage. The paradox also invites us to question whether constant productivity is even desirable. Human beings are not machines designed for continuous output. We are complex creatures who need time for rest, reflection, relationship, and renewal. The seasons teach us that periods of apparent dormancy are essential for future growth. Perhaps our productivity obsession reflects a deeper disconnection from natural rhythms and cycles. As we stand here at the end of our journey through the productivity paradox, we're left with questions rather than answers. What if the solution to feeling overwhelmed by our productivity tools is not finding better tools, but questioning our relationship with productivity itself? What if the key to getting more done is not doing more, but doing less? What if true efficiency comes not from eliminating every moment of inefficiency, but from understanding which inefficiencies serve important purposes? The paradox whispers that maybe the most productive thing we could do is to occasionally stop trying to be productive at all, to sit quietly and think, to have conversations that lead nowhere in particular, to allow ourselves moments of genuine rest without feeling the need to optimize them. In a world obsessed with outcomes, perhaps the most radical act is to sometimes embrace the process, to find value in activities that serve no purpose other than our own humanity. The productivity paradox doesn't offer us clear solutions, but it does offer us something perhaps more valuable: permission to question the assumptions that drive our daily lives, to examine the tools and systems we've accepted without scrutiny, to consider whether our pursuit of efficiency has somehow made us less effective at living. In the quiet spaces between our productive moments, wisdom waits. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the real work begins. The Catch-22 Paradox. There's a story told in hushed tones in the corridors of human experience, a tale as old as bureaucracy itself and as fresh as this morning's frustration with some impossible requirement that seems designed by the universe's own sense of dark humor. It's the story of Captain John Yossarian, a World War II bombardier who discovered something that would echo through generations of human understanding. Sometimes the very rules meant to protect us become the very things that trap us. Picture, if you will, Yossarian sitting in his tent on a military base in Italy, the Mediterranean sun filtering through canvas walls as he contemplates a regulation that would make perfect sense if only it weren't so perfectly senseless. The rule stated that any pilot who was mentally unfit to fly could be excused from dangerous bombing missions, but there was a catch. Actually, there was Catch-22. To be excused from flying, a pilot had to request to be grounded due to mental unfitness. But here's where the beautiful, terrible logic revealed itself. Anyone rational enough to recognize the insanity of repeatedly flying into deadly combat was, by that very recognition, demonstrating their mental fitness to continue flying. The act of asking to be excused proved that you shouldn't be excused. It was a perfect circle of impossibility, a logical trap with no exit, a rule that ate its own tail with systematic precision. This is the essence of what we now call a Catch-22. The Catch-22 reveals something fascinating about the nature of self-referential systems, those strange loops where rules or thoughts reference themselves in ways that create logical impossibilities. The famous liar's paradox captures this beautifully. If someone says, "I am lying," are they telling the truth or lying? If they're telling the truth, then they're not lying, which makes their statement false. If they're lying, then their statement is true, which means they're not lying. The statement becomes logically unstable, flickering between true and false like a light with faulty wiring. These paradoxes might seem like academic curiosities, but they point toward something profound about the limits of logical systems. The mathematician Kurt Gödel proved that any logical system complex enough to describe arithmetic will contain statements that are true but unprovable within the system. In other words, every sufficiently complex logical framework will eventually encounter its own Catch-22, a point where its rules create contradictions that cannot be resolved using those same rules. This insight ripples outward into questions about human institutions and the rules we create to govern our societies. Perhaps the prevalence of Catch-22 situations isn't a bug in our systems, but an inevitable feature of any system complex enough to handle the messy realities of human existence. The more comprehensive our rules become, the more likely they are to eventually contradict themselves or create impossible requirements. Consider the modern healthcare system, where a person may be too sick to work but not sick enough to qualify for disability benefits, caught in a liminal space where they're simultaneously too ill and not ill enough. Or the immigration system, where someone may need to leave their home country to apply for asylum, but cannot legally enter another country without already having asylum status. These aren't failures of design, but perhaps inevitable consequences of trying to create categorical rules for situations that exist along continuous spectrums. The workplace provides fertile ground for Catch-22 situations to flourish. An employee is criticized for not taking initiative, but when they do take initiative, they're criticized for not following proper procedures. They're told to think outside the box while staying within clearly defined parameters. They're expected to be innovative while adhering to established practices. The mixed messages create a kind of psychological paralysis where any action can be wrong depending on who's evaluating it and when. Management structures often create their own catches. A middle manager needs approval from above to make changes, but is held responsible for problems they cannot solve without that approval. A team leader is accountable for their team's performance, but lacks the authority to remove underperforming members. The responsibility flows downward while the power flows upward, creating gaps where people become trapped between expectation and capability. Educational systems aren't immune to these logical knots. Students are told to think critically while being penalized for questioning authority. They're encouraged to be creative while being measured against standardized criteria. They need to demonstrate understanding before being taught, but they need to be taught before they can demonstrate understanding. The system designed to educate sometimes educates most powerfully about the futility of logical consistency. Technology has created new variations on the Catch-22 theme. You need to verify your identity online to access your account, but you need to access your account to verify your identity. You need to download an app to get tech support, but you need tech support to fix the problem preventing you from downloading apps. You need to be online to troubleshoot your internet connection. Each advancement in security and automation seems to spawn new impossibilities. The psychological weight of living with persistent Catch-22 situations can be profound. There's something uniquely frustrating about being trapped not by physical barriers or lack of resources, but by the pure logic of contradictory requirements. It's like being imprisoned by mathematics itself, held captive by the very reasoning that's supposed to set us free. Some people respond to these logical traps by becoming cynical about systems in general, assuming that all rules are arbitrary and all institutions fundamentally absurd. Others internalize the contradictions, blaming themselves for their inability to navigate impossible requirements. Still, others become masters at finding loopholes and workarounds, developing a kind of lateral thinking that treats official procedures as puzzles to be solved rather than rules to be followed. But perhaps the most profound response is to recognize Catch-22 situations as invitations to transcend purely logical thinking. When faced with contradictory requirements, we might need to step outside the system entirely, to find third options that weren't apparent within the original framework. Sometimes the solution to a logical trap is to refuse to accept the premises that create the trap in the first place. The original Yossarian eventually finds his escape not by solving the Catch-22, but by abandoning the entire system that created it. He deserts, choosing to step outside the framework rather than trying to work within its contradictory rules. This isn't necessarily advocating for abandoning responsibility, but rather recognizing that some problems cannot be solved at the level at which they were created. In our personal lives, this might mean recognizing when we're caught in self-created Catch-22 situations and having the courage to question the assumptions that bind us. The perfectionist might need to deliberately embrace imperfection. The socially anxious person might need to act as if they're confident even while feeling afraid. The solution often involves a kind of leap that transcends the logical framework creating the problem. Organizations and institutions might benefit from regularly examining their rules for inadvertent Catch-22s, looking for places where perfectly reasonable individual requirements combine to create impossible situations. This requires a kind of systems thinking that looks beyond the logic of individual rules to understand how they interact in practice. As we stand here contemplating these strange loops of human logic, we might ask ourselves, what Catch-22s are we living with right now? What impossible requirements have we accepted as normal? What contradictory expectations are we trying to fulfill simultaneously? The Catch-22 paradox doesn't just describe absurd situations, it reveals something fundamental about the human condition. We are creatures of logic living in a world where pure logic often breaks down, where reasonable rules create unreasonable situations, where the very systems we create to solve problems sometimes become problems themselves. Perhaps the deepest wisdom of the Catch-22 is not that it shows us how absurd our systems can be, but that it reminds us of the importance of human judgment, flexibility, and the willingness to sometimes break rules that no longer serve their intended purpose. In a world of increasingly complex and automated systems, the human ability to recognize when logic has created a trap and to step outside that logic may be more valuable than ever. The paradox whispers to us that sometimes the most reasonable thing to do is to be unreasonable, that sometimes the most logical response is to abandon logic altogether. In the spaces between contradictory requirements, in the gaps where systems break down, we find opportunities for grace, creativity, and the kind of thinking that transcends the very categories that created our problems in the first place. The paradox of thrift. Picture a small town nestled in a valley, the kind of place where everyone knows their neighbors and the local diner serves coffee that's been brewing since dawn. The residents of this town are prudent, responsible people who believe deeply in the virtue of saving money. They clip coupons, comparison shop, and tuck away a portion of every paycheck for rainy days that might come. These are admirable qualities, the kind that parents teach their children and that financial advisors recommend with unwavering confidence. But imagine what happens when everyone in this town, faced with uncertain times, decides to save more and spend less. The baker notices fewer customers buying fresh bread, so he reduces his orders from the local flour mill. The mill owner, seeing decreased demand, cuts back his purchases from the wheat farmer. The farmer, earning less, postpones buying that new tractor from the equipment dealer. The dealer, with inventory sitting unsold, reduces his staff. The laid-off workers, now worried about their future, decide they too must save more and spend less. Each individual decision makes perfect sense. Each person is acting rationally, responsibly, prudently. Yet somehow, their collective wisdom creates collective folly. The very behavior that would secure each person's financial future when practiced alone begins to undermine everyone's prosperity when practiced by all. This is the heart of what economists call the paradox of thrift, and it reveals something profound and unsettling about the nature of human society. Sometimes our individual virtues, when universalized, transform into collective vices. Sometimes what's good for one becomes harmful for all. The paradox was first articulated clearly by the economist John Maynard Keynes, but its roots reach back into the fundamental tension between individual wisdom and collective well-being. It challenges one of our most basic assumptions about economic behavior, that if something is good for the individual, it must be good for society as a whole. The paradox of thrift suggests that this intuition, however appealing, is sometimes dangerously wrong. To understand why this happens, we need to think about money not just as something we save, but as something that must circulate. Money, in this sense, is like blood in an economic body. When it flows freely, it nourishes every part of the system. When it pools in certain places and stops moving, the parts deprived of circulation begin to wither. Your spending is someone else's income. The money you spend on groceries becomes the grocer's revenue, which pays the stockroom worker's wages, which buys the mechanic's services, which supports the mechanic's family spending at the local restaurant. This chain of transactions creates what economists call the multiplier effect, where each dollar spent ripples through the economy multiple times, creating value far beyond its original amount. But the reverse is also true. When you save money instead of spending it, that money stops circulating, at least temporarily. The grocer receives less revenue, pays less in wages, creates less demand for mechanics, who have less to spend at restaurants. The chain of economic activity contracts just as surely as it would have expanded with spending. Now, if only you are saving. While everyone else continues their normal spending patterns, this contraction is barely noticeable. The economy is large enough to absorb one person's increased thrift without significant disruption. Your individual savings accumulate while the broader economic engine continues humming along. But what happens when everyone has the same idea at the same time? This is where the paradox reveals its cruel logic. When everyone tries to save simultaneously, everyone's income begins to fall simultaneously. The money you're trying to save becomes harder to earn because others are also trying to save the money they would normally spend on the goods or services you provide. The paradox becomes even more perverse when we consider its psychological dimensions. When people see economic uncertainty on the horizon, their natural instinct is to batten down the hatches, to prepare for storm by conserving resources. This instinct served our ancestors well when survival depended on storing grain for winter or saving water during drought seasons. But in a modern interconnected economy, This same survival instinct can create the very conditions it seeks to avoid. Consider what happened during the Great Depression of the 1930s. As economic uncertainty grew, rational individuals began saving more and spending less. But this collective shift toward thrift created a deflationary spiral, where reduced spending led to business failures, which led to unemployment, which led to even more cautious spending. The prudent behavior of individuals combined to create an economic catastrophe that made everyone worse off. The paradox doesn't require a full economic depression to manifest. It can be seen in smaller scales during any period when uncertainty causes widespread increases in saving. After the 2008 financial crisis, for instance, American households increased their savings rates significantly. While this was understandable and even prudent from an individual perspective, it contributed to a slow and difficult economic recovery. The very caution that protected individual families from financial hardship prolonged the broader economic weakness that threatened everyone. But the paradox of thrift extends beyond purely economic considerations into the realm of human psychology and social behavior. It reveals something uncomfortable about the nature of virtue itself. We generally think of virtues as absolute goods, qualities that become more beneficial as more people practice them. Honesty, kindness, courage, these seem to improve society as they spread. Thrift, however, belongs to a different category of virtues, what we might call contextual virtues. These are qualities that are beneficial in some circumstances but potentially harmful in others, or beneficial when practiced by some, but not when practiced by all. Thrift is virtuous when it prevents wasteful overconsumption, when it builds financial security, when it creates resources for investment. But thrift becomes problematic when it's practiced so universally that it starves the economic system of the spending necessary for healthy circulation. This challenges our moral intuitions in profound ways. How can something be simultaneously right and wrong? How can a virtue become a vice simply by being too widely practiced? The paradox forces us to think about ethics not just in terms of individual actions, but in terms of collective consequences. The complexity deepens when we consider that the paradox isn't absolute. There are times when increased saving by everyone would indeed benefit society. If an economy is overheating, if inflation is running rampant, if resources are being wasted on frivolous consumption, then a collective increase in thrift might be exactly what's needed to restore balance. The virtue or vice of thrift depends entirely on context, on the state of the economy, the level of employment, the balance between consumption and investment. This contextual nature of the paradox makes it particularly difficult as we navigate our own financial choices. The paradox invites us to consider not just what's best for us individually, but how our choices fit into the larger economic ecosystem of which we're all part. It suggests that true financial wisdom might sometimes require not just individual discipline, but collective understanding. Not just personal responsibility, but social awareness. In the end, the paradox of thrift reveals something profound about the human condition. We are simultaneously individual agents making autonomous choices and interdependent members of complex systems. Our challenge is to honor both aspects of this reality, to act with individual wisdom while remaining aware of collective consequences, to pursue personal virtue while contributing to collective flourishing. The work-life balance paradox. There's a phrase that floats through modern conversations like smoke through a crowded room, appearing in job postings and self-help books, in corporate mission statements and personal goal-setting sessions. Work-life balance. It sounds so reasonable, so achievable, so obviously desirable. Who wouldn't want their professional responsibilities and personal fulfillment to exist in perfect harmony? Like dancers moving in synchronized rhythm across the stage of daily existence. Yet, the more we pursue this elusive balance, the more it seems to slip through our fingers like water. The harder we work to separate our professional and personal lives, the more they seem to bleed into each other. The more tools and techniques we employ to manage this balance, the the more managing the balance itself becomes another form of work. We find ourselves caught in a strange loop where the very pursuit of work-life balance becomes an imbalance all its own. This is the work-life balance paradox, and it reveals something profound about the nature of modern life, the structure of work, and perhaps most importantly, the fundamental flaw in how we think about the relationship between what we do and who we are. The paradox suggests that the problem isn't just that we haven't found the right technique or schedule or boundary. The problem may be embedded in the very concept of balance itself. Consider for a moment the metaphor we've chosen. Balance implies two distinct entities that must be kept in equilibrium, like weights on opposite sides of a scale. This framing immediately creates a conceptual division. Work is one thing, life is another, and they exist in opposition to each other. Work takes from life, life takes from work, and our job is to carefully manage this competition for our time and energy. But what happens when work becomes life and life becomes work? What happens when the boundaries we're trying to draw don't reflect the reality of how modern existence actually unfolds? The metaphor begins to crack under the weight of its own assumptions, revealing the strange territory we've entered where traditional categories no longer apply. Take Sarah, a marketing consultant who loves her work, finds meaning in helping small businesses tell their stories, and has built her career around creative problem solving. She works from home, sets her own schedule, and chooses projects that align with her values. According to conventional wisdom, Sarah should be living the work-life balance dream. Yet, she finds herself constantly wrestling with guilt when she enjoys thinking about work during weekend walks, or when she feels energized by checking emails on Sunday evening, or when her most creative ideas come while she's supposed to be relaxing. The balance paradigm tells Sarah she should compartmentalize these experiences, that work thoughts during personal time represent a failure of boundaries. But what if her engagement with meaningful work is actually part of what gives her life richness and purpose? What if the attempt to rigidly separate these domains diminishes both her professional effectiveness and personal satisfaction? Or consider Michael, a software engineer who has carefully constructed what appears to be perfect work-life balance. He works exactly 40 hours per week, never checks email after 6 p.m., and has clear boundaries between professional and personal time. Yet he finds himself increasingly restless and unfulfilled. His work feels mechanical and meaningless, something to be endured rather than embraced. His personal time, while protected, feels hollow without a sense of purpose that transcends leisure activities. The balance he's achieved feels less like harmony and more like a ceasefire between two equally unsatisfying aspects of his existence. The paradox deepens when we examine the industrial origins of the work-life balance concept. The phrase emerged from a world where work was typically physical, repetitive, and clearly bounded by factory walls and time clocks. In that context, the separation made perfect sense. Work was what you did to earn money. Life was what you did with that money in the remaining hours. The two existed in different spaces, involved different people, and served different purposes. But knowledge work has fundamentally altered this landscape. When your work involves creativity, problem-solving, relationship building, and intellectual engagement, the boundaries become far less clear. Ideas don't respect office hours. Insights don't wait for Monday morning. The phone call from a colleague might be the most meaningful conversation of your week, while the mandatory team-building exercise might feel like the ultimate intrusion on your authentic self. The rise of remote work and digital connectivity has accelerated this blurring of boundaries. The laptop that enables you to work from a beach in Bali is the same device that allows work to follow you to your bedroom at midnight. The flexibility that lets you attend your child's school play at 2 p.m. is the same flexibility that makes it acceptable for urgent emails to arrive during dinner. We've gained unprecedented freedom in when and where we work, but we've also lost the clear demarcation lines that once made balance possible to define, let alone achieve. The paradox reveals itself most clearly in the way we've turned work-life balance into another performance metric, another area where we can succeed or fail. We read books about boundary setting, attend workshops on time management, and download apps to help us track and optimize the allocation of our hours. We've created elaborate systems for managing our calendars, protecting our time, and measuring our progress toward balance. But all of this management activity requires time, energy, and mental space, resources that must be borrowed from either work or life, creating the very imbalance we're trying to solve. Social media has added another layer to the paradox. We curate images of our balanced lives, posting photos of beach vacations with carefully cropped-out laptops, or family dinners, where everyone's phones are supposedly put away. But the act of curating this image of balance often requires constant vigilance about how our lives appear to others, blurring the line between authentic living and performative balance. The presentation of balance becomes another form of work. The language we use to describe work-life balance is revealing in its violence. We talk about defending our boundaries, protecting our time, fighting for balance. We frame the relationship between work and life as inherently adversarial, as if they were competing armies rather than aspects of a single human existence. This martial metaphor creates a mindset where we're always at war with ourselves, always vigilant against encroachment, always ready to repel invaders from whichever domain we're currently trying to protect. But what if the very notion of separate domains is the source of our struggle? What if work and life aren't meant to be balanced but integrated? What if the goal isn't to keep them in perfect equilibrium, but to find ways for them to enhance and enrich each other? Consider the concept of work-life integration instead of balance. Integration suggests a more organic relationship, where professional and personal elements flow together naturally rather than being held in careful separation. Under this paradigm, the marketing consultant who gets excited about work ideas during weekend walks isn't failing at balance. She's experiencing integration. Her personal reflective time is enhancing her professional creativity, while her professional engagement is adding meaning to her personal experience. But integration brings its own challenges and paradoxes. If we're no longer trying to maintain separate domains, how do we ensure that one aspect of life doesn't completely overwhelm the others? If we embrace the blurred boundaries, how do we maintain space for rest, reflection, and relationships that exist outside of professional productivity? The integration model may solve some problems while creating others. The work-life balance paradox also reflects deeper questions about the nature of meaningful work and authentic living. In previous generations, work was often seen as a necessary evil, something to be endured in service of supporting the real life that happened outside of working hours. But as we've moved toward an economy based on knowledge, creativity, and service, many people expect work to be a source of meaning, identity, and fulfillment. This expectation creates a double bind. If work should be meaningful and fulfilling, then shouldn't we want to spend more time engaged with it? But if we spend more time at work, aren't we sacrificing the very life experiences that give work its meaning? The search for meaningful work can lead to an intensity of engagement that makes traditional balance impossible, while the pursuit of balance can lead to a superficial relationship with work that drains it of meaning. The paradox becomes even more complex when we consider the role of technology in modern work. Our devices are simultaneously tools of liberation and enslavement. They free us from the constraints of physical offices and fixed schedules, but they also make us perpetually available, perpetually connected, perpetually on call. The smartphone that lets you check on an important project while on vacation is the same device that interrupts your child's bedtime story with an urgent message from a client. We've developed elaborate strategies for managing this technological intrusion. Digital detoxes, phone-free zones, apps that block other apps. But these solutions often feel like trying to hold back the ocean with a teacup. The fundamental nature of connected, always-on work seems to resist our attempts at containment. The generational aspects of the work-life balance paradox are particularly fascinating. Millennials and Gen Z workers often prioritize flexibility, purpose, and integration over traditional career advancement and financial maximization. They're more likely to seek work that aligns with their values and to expect employers to support their whole-person development. Yet they're also more likely to experience anxiety, burnout, and the feeling that they're never fully present in any aspect of their lives. Perhaps this is because they're the first generations to fully inhabit the paradox. They've inherited the expectation that work should be meaningful and life should be fulfilling, while also being told that these two goods must be carefully balanced against each other. They're trying to achieve integration in systems designed for separation, seeking authenticity in environments built around performance metrics. The economic dimensions of the paradox add another layer of complexity. The gig economy promises flexibility and autonomy, the ability to be your own boss, set your own schedule, and achieve perfect work-life balance. Yet many gig workers find themselves working longer hours, dealing with greater uncertainty, and facing constant pressure to hustle for the next opportunity. The freedom to work anywhere at any time can become the obligation to work everywhere all the time. Even traditional employment has been reshaped by the balance imperative. Companies offer flexible schedules, remote work options, and generous PTO policies. But these benefits often come with the implicit expectation that employees will be more productive, more engaged, and more available than ever before. The flexibility to work from home during your child's sick day comes with the understanding that you'll still meet all your deadlines and attend all your meetings. The work-life balance paradox also intersects with gender in complex ways. Women, who still bear a disproportionate burden of caregiving responsibilities, are often expected to be masters of work-life balance. They're praised for successfully juggling career and family, but this praise often masks the impossible standards they're trying to meet. The working mother who appears to have achieved perfect balance may be constantly exhausted from the mental and emotional labor required to maintain that appearance. At its deepest level, the work-life balance paradox might be pointing toward a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of human flourishing. The balance metaphor assumes that work and life are separate goods that must be carefully rationed. But what if human fulfillment isn't about achieving perfect equilibrium between different life domains, but about finding coherence and meaning that flows through all aspects of existence? What if instead of trying to balance work and life, we focused on creating a life where work feels like a natural expression of our values, talents, and purposes? What if instead of protecting our personal time from work intrusion, we found ways to infuse all our time with the qualities we most value: creativity, connection, growth, contribution? This doesn't mean abandoning all boundaries or working constantly. Rather, it might mean thinking about boundaries differently, not as walls that separate different aspects of life, but as membranes that allow healthy exchange while maintaining necessary distinctions. It might mean focusing less on achieving perfect balance and more on creating sustainable rhythms that honor both our need for engagement and our need for rest. The paradox invites us to question whether the problem is our failure to achieve work-life balance or our attachment to the concept itself. Perhaps the very idea of balance creates an impossible standard that generates anxiety and guilt rather than the harmony it promises. Perhaps what we really seek isn't balance, but wholeness, a way of living where all aspects of our existence feel connected to our deepest values and purposes. As we navigate our own relationship with work and life, the paradox offers not answers, but better questions. Instead of asking how to achieve perfect balance, we might ask what makes our work feel meaningful and our personal time feel restorative. Instead of measuring our success by how well we maintain separation, we might evaluate how coherent and authentic our lives feel across all domains. The work-life balance paradox whispers to us that perhaps the most radical thing we could do is stop trying to balance our lives and start trying to live them fully, with awareness, intention, and the recognition that work and life aren't competing forces but different expressions of the same human desire to matter, to contribute, to grow, and to connect with something larger than ourselves. The efficiency paradox. Imagine standing at the edge of a perfectly organized warehouse. Online shopping promised to make purchasing more efficient by eliminating the need to visit physical stores. We can now buy anything we want with a few clicks, have it delivered directly to our doorstep, and compare prices across thousands of vendors instantly. Yet, this efficiency has created new forms of inefficiency. The paradox of choice that leaves us paralyzed by options, the environmental cost of rapid delivery systems, the cognitive burden of constantly evaluating deals and optimizing purchases. The workplace provides perhaps the richest laboratory for observing the efficiency paradox in action. Open office designs were implemented to maximize efficiency by reducing the cost per square foot per employee and increasing collaboration. Yet studies consistently show that open offices reduce productivity by increasing distractions, interruptions, and the cognitive load required to maintain focus in a chaotic environment. The efficiency of space usage created inefficiency in actual work. Project management software promised to make teams more efficient by providing clear visibility into tasks, deadlines, and progress. Yet many teams now spend more time updating project management systems than they spend on the actual projects being managed. The efficiency of tracking work has become a form of work itself, requiring its own optimization and management. The digital revolution has accelerated these paradoxes exponentially. We carry devices more powerful than the computers that guided spacecraft to the moon, yet we often feel less capable of sustained focus, deep thinking, or meaningful productivity than previous generations with far simpler tools. Our efficient access to information has created inefficient patterns of constant distraction and mental fragmentation. Consider how search engines have made finding information incredibly efficient. In milliseconds, we can locate answers to virtually any question, access any document, discover any fact. Yet, this efficiency has created its own inefficiencies. We've lost the skill of remembering information because we know we can always look it up again. We've become less patient with complex reasoning because we expect instant answers. We've traded deep knowledge for surface-level information retrieval. The paradox operates at deeper psychological levels as well. The pursuit of personal efficiency through life hacking, productivity systems, and optimization techniques often becomes so time-consuming that it reduces the very productivity it aims to enhance. People spend hours reading productivity blogs, testing new apps, and fine-tuning their systems, leaving less time for the actual work these systems are meant to optimize. This meta-inefficiency reveals something profound about the nature of optimization itself. When we focus too intensely on optimizing our processes, the optimization becomes a process that itself requires optimization. We enter recursive loops where we're optimizing our optimization, managing our management systems, and streamlining our streamlining processes. The efficiency paradox also manifests in the realm of decision-making. Rational choice theory suggests that efficient decision-making involves carefully weighing costs and benefits, comparing all available options, and selecting the choice that maximizes utility. Yet, psychological research reveals that this approach often leads to decision paralysis, regret, and reduced satisfaction with chosen outcomes. Consider the grocery store experience. Decades ago, shoppers might choose between 2 or 3 brands of breakfast cereal. The decision was simple, efficient, and rarely cause for extensive deliberation. Today's supermarket offers hundreds of cereal options, each optimized for different dietary needs, taste preferences, and health concerns. The efficiency of providing more choices has created the inefficiency of choice overload, where the cognitive burden of deciding often exceeds the benefit of having optimal options. The phenomenon extends to career choices, relationship decisions, and lifestyle preferences. Dating apps promise to make finding compatible partners more efficient by providing vast pools of potential matches and sophisticated filtering algorithms. Yet many users report feeling overwhelmed by options. paralyzed by the constant possibility of finding someone better and less satisfied with their actual relationships because they're always aware of alternatives. In manufacturing and business operations, the pursuit of efficiency has led to just-in-time inventory systems, lean manufacturing processes, and supply chains optimized to eliminate waste and reduce costs. These systems work beautifully under normal conditions, achieving remarkable efficiency gains. But they're often fragile in the face of unexpected disruptions. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed how efficiency-optimized supply chains could become profoundly inefficient when faced with unforeseen challenges. Global shortages of everything from semiconductors to toilet paper occurred not because production capacity was insufficient, but because efficient systems had eliminated the redundancy and flexibility needed to handle disruptions. The efficiency of normal operations created inefficiency during abnormal conditions. This reveals a deeper aspect of the efficiency paradox: the relationship between efficiency and resilience. Systems optimized for efficiency often sacrifice robustness, adaptability, and error tolerance. They work perfectly under ideal conditions, but fail catastrophically when conditions change. The most efficient path between 2 points is a straight line, but straight lines are often the most fragile when obstacles appear. Biological systems illustrate this trade-off beautifully. Evolution doesn't optimize for efficiency alone, but for survival and reproduction under uncertain and changing conditions. The human brain consumes about 20% of our body's energy despite being only 2% of our body weight. Hardly an efficient design if efficiency were the only criterion. But this apparent inefficiency enables remarkable flexibility, creativity, and adaptability that purely efficient systems cannot match. The paradox appears in organizational culture as well. Companies that focus solely on efficiency often create environments where employees are afraid to take risks, experiment, or invest time in activities that don't have immediately measurable returns. This efficient allocation of human resources can stifle innovation, creativity, and the kind of exploration that leads to breakthrough discoveries. Google's famous 20% time policy, which allows employees to spend 1 day per week on personal projects, might seem inefficient from a traditional productivity standpoint. Yet many of Google's most successful products, including Gmail and AdSense, emerged from this apparently inefficient use of employee time. The inefficiency of allowing undirected exploration created efficiencies in innovation that more directed approaches couldn't achieve. The efficiency paradox also illuminates the difference between local optimization and global optimization. When each part of a system is optimized for maximum efficiency, the system as a whole may become less efficient than if some parts were deliberately sub-optimized to serve the broader purpose. Traffic provides another example. If every driver chooses the most efficient route for their individual journey, the collective result may be gridlock. But if some drivers choose slightly less efficient individual routes, the overall traffic flow might improve for everyone. The inefficiency of individual choices can create collective efficiency. This principle applies to everything from economic markets to ecological systems to organizational hierarchies. The most efficient individual behaviors don't always aggregate into efficient collective outcomes. Sometimes what appears wasteful at the micro level serves essential functions at the macro level. The psychological costs of extreme efficiency pursuit are often hidden but significant. When every moment must be productive, every action must serve a purpose, every resource must be utilized to its maximum potential, life can begin to feel mechanized and joyless. The efficiency that was meant to free us to enjoy life better can end up consuming the very experiences that make life worth living. Children provide a profound example of apparently inefficient behavior that serves crucial developmental purposes. Children play, explore, ask questions, make messes, and engage in seemingly purposeless activities that drive efficiency-minded adults to distraction. Yet these apparently wasteful behaviors are essential for learning, creativity, and healthy development. The inefficiency of childhood exploration creates the foundation for adult capability. As we stand here contemplating the strange loops and unintended consequences of our efficiency obsession, we might ask ourselves, what are we optimizing for, and what are we optimizing away? What essential human qualities might we be sacrificing on the altar of productivity? What forms of value are we missing because they can't be measured in units of efficiency? The efficiency paradox doesn't argue against efficiency itself, but against the tyranny of efficiency as the sole organizing principle of human life. It suggests that optimal human flourishing might require a more nuanced understanding of when efficiency serves us and when it constrains us. Perhaps true wisdom lies not in maximizing efficiency, but in understanding when to be efficient and when to embrace inefficiency, when to streamline and when to meander, when to optimize and when to explore, when to eliminate waste and when to allow for the kind of productive waste that generates creativity, resilience, and joy. The paradox invites us to consider that some of the most important aspects of human experience, love, creativity, wisdom, meaning, emerge not from efficient processes, but from the spaces between efficiency, the moments when we allow ourselves to be gloriously, purposefully, meaningfully inefficient. In a world increasingly dominated by algorithms designed to optimize everything from our commutes to our social media feeds to our romantic matches, perhaps the most radical thing we could do is occasionally choose the longer route. Read the book that serves no immediate purpose. Have the conversation that goes nowhere in particular. Pursue the hobby that produces nothing marketable. The efficiency paradox whispers to us that, in our quest to eliminate all waste, we might be wasting the very things that make us human. In our desire to optimize every moment, we might be missing the magic that emerges in unoptimized spaces. In our pursuit of perfect efficiency, we might be becoming perfectly inhuman. The digital detox paradox. Picture yourself sitting in a cabin by a pristine lake, mountains reflected in water so still it looks like glass. Your phone lies silent on the wooden table beside you, its screen dark for the first time in months. You've committed to a digital detox, a conscious retreat from the constant hum of notifications, the endless scroll of social media, the perpetual ping of messages demanding your attention. You breathe deeply, feeling a sense of liberation wash over you like cool morning air. But then something curious happens. Within hours of disconnecting, you find yourself thinking more about technology than you did when you were fully immersed in it. Your mind wanders to the emails accumulating in your inbox, the social media posts you're missing, the group chats continuing without you. The absence of your digital devices has somehow made them more present in your consciousness, not less. You've escaped the tyranny of constant connectivity only to discover that the escape itself has become another form of preoccupation. This is the heart of the digital detox paradox, and it reveals something profound about our relationship with technology in the modern age. The very act of trying to free ourselves from digital dependency can make us more aware of that dependency, more anxious about our disconnection, more obsessed with the tools we're trying to avoid. In seeking digital peace, we sometimes find digital unrest. In pursuing technological liberation, we sometimes encounter technological anxiety. The paradox emerges from a fundamental tension in how we conceptualize our relationship with digital technology. We frame it as an addiction to be cured, a habit to be broken, a force to be resisted. The language we use is borrowed from addiction recovery. We speak of digital detox, screen time limits, and cold turkey approaches to social media. This framing casts technology as inherently harmful, something foreign to human nature that we must vigilantly guard against. But what if the reality is more complex? What if digital technology has become so interwoven with how we work, connect, learn, and express ourselves that trying to extract it is like trying to extract a thread from a tapestry without disturbing the overall pattern? What if the problem isn't technology itself, but our conflicted relationship with it? Consider Maria, a graphic designer who decides to take a week-long digital detox after feeling overwhelmed by constant notifications and social media comparison. She locks her devices away, informs her clients she'll be unreachable, and heads to a mountain retreat. The first day feels wonderful. She reads physical books, takes long walks, and enjoys uninterrupted meals. But by the second day, she's sketching design ideas in the dirt with sticks, mentally composing emails she can't send, and feeling increasingly anxious about the professional opportunities she might be missing. Maria's experience illustrates how digital detox can sometimes amplify rather than resolve our technological anxieties. The forced separation creates a rebound effect where technology becomes more alluring precisely because it's forbidden. The detox that was meant to reduce her preoccupation with digital tools has made those tools the center of her mental attention. This rebound effect reflects a deeper psychological principle. When we try to suppress thoughts or desires, they often become more persistent and intrusive. The person trying not to think about white elephants inevitably finds themselves preoccupied with white elephants. The dieter who forbids themselves chocolate often finds chocolate occupying more mental space than when it was freely available. The digital detox paradox is compounded by the fact that complete disconnection from digital technology is increasingly impractical in modern society. Unlike traditional addictions to substances that aren't necessary for daily functioning, digital devices have become essential tools for work, communication, navigation, banking, and countless other basic activities. It's as if we were trying to detox from water while living in a desert. The paradox reveals itself most clearly in the way digital detoxes often become another form of digital engagement. People photograph their unplugged devices. The paradox deepens when we consider the environmental implications of digital detox culture. The retreat centers, travel, and physical books that often accompany digital detoxes have their own environmental costs. The carbon footprint of traveling to a remote cabin for a digital detox might exceed the environmental impact of staying home and reading e-books. We're trying to escape the environmental costs of technology by engaging in activities that create different environmental costs. The temporal dimensions of the paradox are equally fascinating. Most digital detoxes are temporary, a week, a weekend, a few hours. But the problems they're meant to address are ongoing and systemic. The brief relief of disconnection often makes the return to digital engagement more jarring and overwhelming. It's like holding your breath underwater. The longer you hold it, the more desperate you become for air when you surface. This temporary nature of most detoxes can create a cycle where people regularly need to escape from their digital lives, rather than finding sustainable ways to integrate technology that support their well-being. The detox becomes a pressure valve rather than a solution, a way of managing symptoms rather than addressing underlying causes. Perhaps most paradoxically, the rise of digital detox culture coincides with technology becoming more essential for basic civic participation. Voting registration, healthcare access, government services, and economic transactions are increasingly digital only. The person who successfully detoxes from technology might find themselves detoxing from full participation in modern society. The paradox invites us to consider whether the problem lies not with technology itself, but with our relationship to it. Instead of viewing digital tools as inherently harmful substances to be avoided, what if we approached them more like food, something essential for life that requires thoughtful consumption rather than complete abstinence? This perspective suggests focusing less on digital detox and more on digital literacy, developing the skills to use technology intentionally rather than reactively, to engage with digital tools in ways that support our values rather than undermine them, to create boundaries that are sustainable rather than absolute. The mindfulness movement offers insights here. Instead of trying to eliminate thoughts during meditation, mindfulness teaches us to observe them without judgment and let them pass naturally. Similarly, instead of trying to eliminate technology from our lives, we might learn to observe our digital impulses, understand what drives them, and make conscious choices about when and how to engage. This doesn't mean accepting all forms of digital engagement uncritically, but rather developing the wisdom to distinguish between technology use that serves our well-being and technology use that diminishes it. It means recognizing that the same tool can be helpful or harmful depending on how, when, and why we use it. The digital detox paradox ultimately points toward a more nuanced understanding of human flourishing in the digital age. Rather than seeking perfect disconnection, we might pursue conscious connection. Rather than eliminating technology, we might focus on aligning our technology use with our deepest values and purposes. As we navigate our own relationships with digital technology, the paradox invites us to move beyond binary thinking about connection and disconnection toward more sophisticated questions. How can we use technology to enhance rather than diminish our humanity? How can we maintain agency in our digital choices rather than feeling driven by algorithmic design? How can we create space for reflection and presence within our connected lives rather than requiring complete disconnection to find peace? The digital detox paradox whispers to us that perhaps the goal isn't to escape technology, but to integrate it more wisely. Not to find perfect digital silence, but to create harmonious relationships with the tools that have become extensions of ourselves. In the end, the most profound digital wellness might come not from avoiding our devices, but from using them in ways that truly serve our flourishing as complex, connected, creative human beings. The social media connection paradox. There's a moment that happens late at night when the glow of your phone screen illuminates your face in the darkness, and you find yourself scrolling through an endless feed of updates from hundreds of people you know. Friends from high school sharing vacation photos, colleagues posting professional achievements, distant relatives celebrating anniversaries, acquaintances offering opinions on everything from politics to breakfast choices. You're surrounded by human connection, immersed in a stream of shared experiences, witness to the intimate details of lives being lived across the globe. Yet somehow, in the midst of all this connection, you feel profoundly alone. This is the heart of the social media connection paradox, one of the most unsettling contradictions of our digital age. We have access to more people, more conversations, and more shared experiences than any generation in human history. We can connect instantly with someone on the other side of the world, maintain relationships across vast distances, and participate in communities that would have been impossible to form in the physical world. We are more connected than ever before, yet surveys consistently show that loneliness and social isolation are at epidemic levels. How is it possible that tools designed to bring us together have somehow left us feeling more apart? How can platforms built for connection create disconnection? How can social media make us feel antisocial? The paradox begins with the very language we use to describe these platforms. We call them social media, suggesting they facilitate genuine social interaction. We talk about building connections, engaging with content, and participating in conversations. The metaphors imply human contact, relationship building, and authentic communication. Yet the reality often feels quite different from these promises. Consider Emma, a college student who spends several hours each day on various social media platforms. She has over 1,000 followers on Instagram, hundreds of friends on Facebook, and active participation in multiple Twitter conversations. By any external measure, she's deeply connected to a vast network of people. Yet she reports feeling lonelier than ever, particularly when she compares her internal experience to the curated happiness she sees in others' posts. Emma's experience reveals the first layer of the paradox, the difference between connection and connectivity. Social media provides connectivity, the technical ability to exchange information with large numbers of people quickly and efficiently. But connectivity is not the same as connection, which implies deeper qualities like understanding, empathy, vulnerability, and mutual care. We can be highly connected without being truly connected, digitally social without feeling socially fulfilled. The distinction becomes clearer when we examine the nature of social media interactions themselves. The like button, perhaps the most ubiquitous form of social media engagement, offers a perfect example. Receiving likes on a post can feel like social validation, evidence that others have noticed and approved of what we've shared. Yet the act of liking requires minimal investment from others, a single tap that takes less than a second and requires no thought, emotion, or genuine response. This creates what researchers call pseudo-relationships, interactions that mimic the forms of human connection without providing its substance. The person who likes your photo may not remember seeing it 5 minutes later. The comment that says "Great post" may have been typed while the commenter was simultaneously watching television, checking other apps, and eating lunch. The appearance of engagement masks the reality of distraction. The asynchronous nature of social media adds another layer to the paradox. Unlike face-to-face conversation, which requires both parties to be present and engaged simultaneously, social media allows us to interact with others' past selves while they interact with our past selves. You respond to someone's morning post in the evening, they see your response the next day, and by the time they reply, the original context has shifted. The conversation happens, but it happens across time in ways that can feel disconnected from real-time human experience. The algorithmic curation of social media feeds creates its own paradoxes around connection. The platforms show us content designed to maximize engagement, which often means content that provokes strong emotional responses: outrage, envy, fear, or validation-seeking behavior. This can create the illusion of being deeply connected to important conversations while actually being fed a distorted version of reality optimized for attention capture rather than authentic human understanding. The paradox manifests in the phenomenon of context collapse, where all our different social circles, family, work colleagues, high school friends, hobby enthusiasts, are flattened into a single feed. In real life, we naturally adjust our communication style, topics, and level of intimacy based on who we're talking to. But social media forces us to broadcast to everyone simultaneously, leading to either bland, generic content that connects with no one deeply, or selective sharing that excludes parts of our network. This creates a peculiar form of social anxiety where we're simultaneously performing for multiple audiences who have different expectations and relationships with us. The joke that delights our college friends might confuse our work colleagues. The political opinion that resonates with our like-minded community might alienate family members. We find ourselves either self-censoring to avoid conflict or accepting that every post will be misunderstood by someone. The metrics of social media, likes, shares, comments, followers, transform human relationships into quantifiable units, creating what some researchers call social media anxiety. The number of likes on a post becomes a measure of social acceptance. The speed of responses to messages becomes an indicator of relationship quality. The growth or decline of follower counts becomes a source of self-worth. Human connection becomes gamified, reduced to scores that can be compared, optimized, and worried about. This quantification of social interaction can paradoxically make us less social in authentic ways. People report spending significant time crafting the perfect post to maximize likes rather than sharing genuine thoughts or experiences. They choose restaurants, activities, and even relationships based partly on their potential for generating engaging content. The pursuit of social media connection begins to shape real-world behavior in ways that may actually reduce genuine connection. The paradox deepens when we consider how social media affects our capacity for solitude and self-reflection. Previous generations had natural periods of social disconnection, during commutes, while waiting in line, during quiet evenings at home. These moments of solitude weren't empty spaces but opportunities for internal reflection, processing experiences, and developing individual identities separate from social roles. Social media has filled these quiet spaces with constant social stimulation. We check our feeds during every spare moment, scroll through updates while waiting for coffee, and fall asleep to the glow of other people's lives. The constant exposure to others' thoughts, opinions, and experiences can make it difficult to hear our own internal voice or develop genuine self-knowledge independent of social feedback. The phenomenon of social comparison intensifies through social media in ways that can undermine the very connections the platforms promise to facilitate. When we see others highlight reels, their vacation photos, career achievements, relationship milestones, and carefully staged moments of happiness, we naturally compare these to our complete experience, including all the mundane, difficult, and imperfect moments that don't make it into posts. This comparison can create feelings of inadequacy, envy, and social isolation, even when we're technically more connected than ever. The connection we seek through social media becomes contaminated by competitive comparison, turning potential sources of joy and social bonding into triggers for insecurity and disconnection. The global reach of social media creates another layer of paradox. We can connect with people worldwide who share our niche interests, political views, or life experiences. This can create genuine communities around shared passions that would have been impossible to form geographically. Yet, this same global connectivity can make local relationships feel less important or satisfying by comparison. Why invest in getting to know your literal neighbors when you can connect with like-minded people worldwide who seem more interesting or aligned with your interests? The paradox extends to how social media affects our experience of shared activities and events. We attend concerts while filming them for our stories, visit beautiful locations while focusing on getting the perfect photo, and participate in family gatherings while simultaneously sharing the experience with our online networks. The desire to share experiences with our digital communities can interfere with our ability to be fully present with the people physically around us. This creates a strange temporal split where we're simultaneously living experiences and curating them for future sharing. The present moment becomes raw material for social media content, potentially reducing our capacity for genuine presence and connection during actual experiences. The feedback loops of social media create addiction-like patterns that can substitute for genuine relationship building. The intermittent reinforcement of likes, comments, and messages triggers dopamine responses that can be temporarily satisfying, but don't provide the deeper fulfillment that comes from sustained, intimate human relationships. We can spend hours engaging with social media and feel socially stimulated without having experienced genuine human connection. The paradox becomes particularly poignant when we consider how social media affects our relationships with people we know in real life. Partners report feeling neglected when their significant other spends time engaging with social media instead of talking with them. Parents struggle to connect with children who are constantly on their devices. Friends gathering in person find themselves simultaneously present and absent as they divide their attention between face-to-face interaction and online engagement. The promise of social media was that it would supplement and enhance our real-world relationships, allowing us to maintain connections across distance and time. In many ways, it has delivered on this promise. Now imagine leaving that bathroom and walking through your day. You unlock your phone with your fingerprint, allowing it to verify your identity through your unique biological signature. You check the weather, revealing your location to servers thousands of miles away. You browse social media, providing detailed information about your interests, relationships, and emotional states. You use your credit card to buy coffee, creating a digital trail of your preferences and habits. You drive through the city as cameras capture your license plate and facial recognition systems catalog your movements. At each moment, you make small choices that feel insignificant in isolation, but together create a comprehensive portrait of who you are, where you go, what you want, and how you think. Yet, when asked, you would likely say that privacy is important to you. You close the curtains at night, lock your doors, and feel uncomfortable when strangers peer too closely at your phone screen. You value your privacy, yet you consistently act in ways that erode it. This is the essence of the privacy paradox, one of the most revealing contradictions of our digital age. We claim to value privacy highly, express concern about surveillance and data collection, and worry about the implications of living in a transparent society. Yet we voluntarily share intimate details of our lives with corporations, governments, and anyone with access to the vast digital trails we create every day. We say we want privacy, but we act as if we don't care about it at all. The paradox reveals itself most clearly in our relationship with the very technologies that enable unprecedented surveillance. The smartphone that can track our location, monitor our conversations, and analyze our behavior patterns is the same device we voluntarily carry everywhere we go. We could leave it at home, turn it off, or choose simpler devices with fewer tracking capabilities. Yet, we embrace these powerful surveillance tools because they provide benefits we find irresistible: convenience, connection, entertainment, and capabilities that feel almost magical. Consider James, a marketing executive who expresses serious concerns about corporate surveillance and government overreach. He speaks passionately about the importance of privacy rights and the dangers of creating a surveillance state. Yet he uses Google for searches, Facebook for social connection, Amazon for shopping, and Netflix for entertainment. His smart home devices listen for his voice commands, his fitness tracker monitors his health data, and his navigation app knows everywhere he goes. Each service provides real value in exchange for personal information, and James willingly makes these trades despite his privacy concerns. The paradox deepens when we examine the gap between our stated preferences and our revealed preferences. Surveys consistently show that people say privacy is extremely important to them and that they're concerned about data collection by corporations and governments. Yet these same people regularly accept lengthy terms of service agreements without reading them, choose convenient services over privacy-protective alternatives, and share personal information freely in exchange for minor benefits like discounts or personalized recommendations. This behavior isn't necessarily irrational or hypocritical. Instead, it reveals the complex calculus people unconsciously perform when weighing privacy costs against immediate benefits. The abstract future risk of privacy violation feels less compelling than the concrete present benefit of convenience, connection, or entertainment. It's similar to how people might express concern about health while choosing a cheeseburger over a salad. The immediate pleasure outweighs the distant consequence. The privacy paradox also reflects the asymmetrical nature of privacy trades in digital systems. When you share information with a service, the benefits are immediate and tangible. You get personalized recommendations, relevant advertisements, convenient features, or social connections. The privacy costs, however, are abstract, delayed, and often invisible. You might not see the consequences of data sharing for months or years, and when consequences do arise, it's often difficult to trace them back to specific privacy decisions you made in the past. This temporal mismatch between costs and benefits makes it psychologically difficult to make rational privacy decisions. Humans are naturally biased toward immediate rewards over future consequences, a tendency that served us well in environments where the future was highly uncertain but works against us in systems where present decisions create long-term vulnerabilities. The concept of privacy itself has become complicated in ways that contribute to the paradox. Traditional privacy was largely about controlling physical access to private spaces and personal information. You could lock your door, keep your diary hidden, and have conversations in places where eavesdropping was difficult. Privacy was binary. You were either being observed or you weren't. Information was either shared or kept private. Digital privacy operates differently. Information isn't simply shared or not shared. It's shared selectively, aggregated across multiple sources, analyzed algorithmically, and used in ways that may not be apparent to the person who originally shared it. Your location data combined with your shopping history and social media posts can reveal insights about you that you never explicitly shared with anyone. The privacy violations aren't necessarily violations of specific information you chose to keep secret, but violations of patterns and inferences that emerge from combining information you willingly shared in different contexts. This makes it difficult to understand what privacy means in a digital context or to make informed decisions about privacy trades. When you allow a weather app to access your location, are you simply sharing your location for weather purposes? Or are you enabling a complex web of data sharing and analysis that you don't fully understand? The answer depends on the app's privacy policies, business model, data partnerships, and technical architecture. Information that's often buried in legal documents or simply not available to users. The privacy paradox becomes even more complex when we consider the social dimensions of privacy in digital systems. Many digital services become more valuable as more people use them, creating network effects that make privacy-protective alternatives less attractive. If all your friends use WhatsApp, choosing a more private messaging app may protect your privacy but isolate you from your social network. If your workplace uses Google Workspace, opting for privacy-protective alternatives may limit your professional effectiveness. This creates situations where individual privacy choices are constrained by collective adoption of surveillance-based services. You might prefer to use privacy-protective alternatives, but if everyone else in your community or professional network uses privacy-invasive services, your choices become participate in surveillance or accept social and professional isolation. The paradox also reflects the invisibility of most digital surveillance. When someone follows you down the street, you notice and can take action to avoid them. When algorithms track your online behavior, analyze your communication patterns, and build detailed profiles of your interests and relationships, the surveillance is invisible. You can't see the data collection happening, can't identify the specific moments when your privacy is being invaded, and can't easily understand how the collected information is being used. This invisibility makes it psychologically easier to ignore privacy violations. The privacy invasion that doesn't create any immediately noticeable impact feels less real than physical intrusions into your personal space. The abstract knowledge that your data is being collected somewhere by someone feels less threatening than the concrete experience of being watched. The economic structure of digital services creates additional layers to the paradox. Many of the services we use daily are provided free to users, but funded through data collection and targeted advertising. This creates a situation where users receive immediate value while the true costs, in terms of privacy and autonomy, are hidden in complex business models and algorithmic systems. Users often don't realize they're paying for free services with their privacy, attention, and personal information. The transaction feels like getting something for nothing rather than making a privacy trade. This makes it difficult to make informed decisions about whether the services are worth their true costs. The privacy paradox also intersects with changing generational attitudes toward privacy and publicity. Younger generations who grew up with social media may have different concepts of privacy than older generations who lived most of their lives before digital surveillance became pervasive. What feels like a privacy violation to someone who remembers pre-digital life may feel normal to someone who has never experienced truly private digital communication. These generational differences can make it difficult to have coherent social conversations about privacy. When different groups have fundamentally different baseline expectations about what should be private, it becomes challenging to develop shared norms or policies around digital privacy protection. The global nature of digital services adds another dimension to the privacy paradox. The services we use are often provided by companies based in other countries, subject to different legal systems and privacy protections. Our personal information may be stored on servers around the world, processed according to foreign laws, and accessible to governments we didn't choose and can't influence. This global complexity makes it difficult for individual users to understand their privacy rights or take meaningful action to protect their information. The privacy decision that feels personal and individual, should I use this app, actually involves complex international legal and technical systems that are largely invisible and incomprehensible to ordinary users. The paradox becomes particularly acute when we consider the collective action problems around digital privacy. Even if you personally make privacy protective choices, your information may still be collected through your associations with others who make different choices. If your friends tag you in photos on social media, share their contact lists with services that analyze social networks, or communicate with you through surveillance-based platforms, your privacy can be compromised regardless of your personal choices. This creates a situation where individual privacy protection may be impossible without collective action and systemic changes to how digital services operate. The privacy paradox isn't just about individual decision-making, but about the structural design of digital systems that make privacy protection difficult even for highly motivated individuals. The psychological aspects of the privacy paradox are deeply intertwined with how we understand identity and social connection in digital contexts. Sharing personal information can feel like authentic self-expression and social connection, rather than privacy violation. When you post about your interests on social media, check in at locations you visit, or share photos of your activities, you may be seeking social connection and self-expression, rather than consciously choosing to sacrifice privacy. The privacy invasion is a side effect of behaviors that serve important social and psychological needs. This makes privacy protection feel like social isolation or self-censorship rather than security enhancement. The choice between privacy and connection feels like a choice between safety and belonging, between protection and authentic living. As we reflect on the privacy paradox, we might ask ourselves, what does privacy actually mean in a world where information flows freely and algorithms infer more about us than we know about ourselves? Is the traditional concept of privacy, controlling access to personal information, even coherent in digital systems designed around data collection and analysis? Perhaps the paradox points toward a need for new frameworks for thinking about privacy that account for the realities of digital systems. Instead of focusing solely on individual control over personal information, we might think about privacy as a collective good that requires systemic protections and social norms rather than individual vigilance. The privacy paradox also suggests the importance of design changes that make privacy protection easier and more intuitive. If privacy protective choices require significant sacrifice in terms of convenience, social connection, or functionality, most people will rationally choose to sacrifice privacy. But if systems were designed to protect privacy by default while still providing valuable services, the paradox might resolve naturally. The paradox invites us to consider privacy not as a binary choice between sharing and not sharing information, but as a complex ecosystem of relationships, technologies, and social norms that shape how information flows through society. Our challenge may not be to solve the privacy paradox, but to live thoughtfully within it, making informed choices about which privacy trades serve our values while working collectively to create systems that protect privacy without requiring individual sacrifice. The privacy paradox whispers to us that in our interconnected world, privacy is not just a personal choice but a social responsibility, not just an individual right, but a collective challenge. It reminds us that the most profound questions about privacy aren't technical or legal, but deeply human. How do we remain authentic while protecting ourselves? How do we connect with others while maintaining autonomy? How do we live openly while preserving the mystery that makes us human? In the end, the privacy paradox may be less a problem to solve than a tension to navigate wisely, reminding us that in the digital age, the ancient human balance between revelation and concealment, between sharing and solitude, between connection and independence, has taken on new complexity and urgency that requires not just individual awareness but collective wisdom. The convenience paradox. Picture yourself on a typical morning, reaching for your smartphone before your feet even touch the floor. With a few taps, you check the weather, order breakfast to be delivered, schedule a ride to work, and respond to messages that arrived overnight. Within minutes, without leaving your bed, you've accomplished tasks that would have required hours of effort just a generation ago. The world has been compressed into the palm of your hand. Every service imaginable available at the touch of a button. This is the promise of convenience fulfilled. The elimination of friction from daily life, the removal of obstacles between desire and satisfaction. We can summon food from restaurants across the city, have goods delivered to our doorstep within hours, access any piece of human knowledge instantly, and connect with people, but the time saved through individual conveniences often gets consumed by managing the systems that provide those conveniences. We spend time updating apps, managing subscriptions, resolving service issues, and dealing with the digital complexity that convenient systems introduce into our lives. The time we save on specific tasks gets redistributed rather than eliminated, often into less satisfying forms of digital housekeeping. More paradoxically, conveniences can actually create time pressure rather than relieving it. When everything can be done instantly, the expectation of instant results becomes normalized. We become impatient with any delay, frustrated by any friction, intolerant of any waiting. The convenience that was supposed to give us more patience with life often makes us less patient, more rushed, more anxious about time. The convenience paradox also manifests in the relationship between ease and appreciation. When something is difficult to obtain, we tend to value it more highly. The meal that takes hours to prepare is savored more than the one delivered in 20 minutes. The relationship that requires effort to maintain feels more meaningful than the one that exists primarily through convenient digital communication. The journey that requires planning and navigation creates more memorable experiences than the one that happens automatically through app-guided transportation. Convenient access to everything can paradoxically make us appreciate nothing. When any experience is available instantly and effortlessly, experiences lose their specialness. The streaming service that provides instant access to every movie ever made can make the act of watching a movie feel less intentional and satisfying than when choosing a movie required planning and commitment. The social dimensions of the convenience paradox add another layer of complexity. Many conveniences individualize activities that were previously social. Instead of going to a video store and discussing movie choices with friends or staff, we browse streaming catalogs alone. Instead of shopping in physical stores where we might encounter neighbors and have casual conversations, we order online in isolation. Instead of visiting banks where we might interact with community members, we conduct all our financial business through apps. These convenient alternatives are often more efficient and less time-consuming than their social predecessors, but they systematically remove opportunities for casual human interaction and community connection. The convenience that promises to give us more time for social activities may actually reduce the social activities embedded in daily life tasks. The economic aspects of the convenience paradox reveal how convenience can create new forms of inconvenience for society as a whole. The rise of delivery services and on-demand everything has created environmental costs through increased packaging, transportation, and waste. The convenience of having anything delivered anywhere creates inconvenience in the form of traffic congestion, pollution, and resource consumption. Individual convenience choices aggregate into collective inconveniences. When everyone chooses the convenient option of driving instead of walking, the result is traffic jams that make transportation less convenient for everyone. When everyone chooses the convenient option of online shopping, the result is delivery trucks that clog neighborhoods and create new forms of urban stress. The convenience paradox also intersects with issues of equity and access. Many conveniences are available primarily to people with disposable income: smartphones, reliable internet access, and credit cards. The society organized around convenience can become less accessible to people who can't afford or access convenient solutions, creating new forms of disadvantage and exclusion. The convenience that makes life easier for some can make it more difficult for others who must work in the convenience economy. The delivery drivers, warehouse workers, and service providers whose labor enables others' convenience often work in conditions that are far from convenient. The convenience economy can create a two-tier society where some people enjoy unprecedented ease, while others work harder than ever to provide that ease. The psychological effects of the convenience paradox extend into areas of personal development and resilience. Many conveniences reduce the friction and minor challenges that previously provided opportunities for growth, learning, and character development. The small inconveniences of daily life, having to wait, figuring things out, dealing with setbacks, were also opportunities to develop patience, problem-solving skills, and emotional resilience. When conveniences eliminate these micro-challenges, they may also eliminate micro-opportunities for personal development. The person who never experiences the inconvenience of being lost might never develop the confidence that comes from finding their way. The person who never deals with the inconvenience of equipment failure might never develop the resourcefulness that comes from improvising solutions. The convenience paradox also reveals how convenience can become its own form of addiction or compulsion. The instant gratification provided by convenient services can create expectations for instant satisfaction that become difficult to manage when convenient solutions aren't available. We can become psychologically dependent on convenience in ways that make normal life friction feel intolerable. The person accustomed to one-click purchasing might find physical shopping frustrating. The person used to instant entertainment access might find waiting for a TV show to air next week unbearable. Convenience can recalibrate our tolerance for normal life challenges in ways that reduce our overall life satisfaction rather than increasing it. Perhaps most paradoxically, the pursuit of convenience can make our lives feel less convenient overall. As we adopt more convenient solutions, we often accumulate more things to manage, more subscriptions to track, more passwords to remember, more apps to update. The cognitive overhead of managing multiple convenience systems can exceed the cognitive load of the original tasks they were meant to simplify. The person who uses 5 different delivery apps, 3 streaming services, 2 ride-sharing platforms, and multiple subscription services might find their digital life more complex and demanding than the physical errands these services replaced. The convenience of having everything available becomes the inconvenience of managing everything available. The convenience paradox doesn't suggest that all conveniences are harmful, or that we should return to deliberately inconvenient ways of living. Rather, it invites us to think more carefully about which conveniences truly serve our well-being, and which ones create new problems while solving old ones. Some conveniences genuinely improve quality of life by eliminating drudgery, reducing barriers to access, or freeing time for more meaningful activities. Others might provide short-term ease while creating long-term complications or dependencies. The challenge is developing the wisdom to distinguish between conveniences that serve us and those that ultimately make us servants to convenience itself. The paradox also suggests the value of occasionally choosing inconvenience deliberately, taking the longer route to enjoy a walk, cooking a meal instead of ordering delivery, having a phone conversation instead of texting. These choices might seem irrational in a convenience-optimized world, but they can provide forms of satisfaction, skill development, and human connection that convenient alternatives cannot. As we navigate our relationship with convenience, the paradox invites us to consider what we're optimizing for. If we're optimizing purely for speed, ease, and efficiency, we might achieve those goals while sacrificing other values like community, resilience, appreciation, and personal growth. The most convenient life might not be the most fulfilling life. The convenience paradox whispers to us that perhaps the goal isn't to eliminate all inconvenience from life, but to be intentional about which inconveniences we eliminate and which we preserve. It suggests that some friction in life serves important purposes, slowing us down enough to appreciate experiences, creating opportunities for serendipitous encounters, building skills and confidence through small challenges. In the end, the convenience paradox may be teaching us that the path to a truly satisfying life isn't about making everything as easy as possible, but about finding the right balance between ease and effort, between convenience and engagement, between having everything at our fingertips and still feeling that what we grasp has meaning and value. The paradox of automation. Picture yourself stepping into a gleaming automotive factory where robotic arms dance in perfect synchronization, welding and assembling with precision that exceeds any human capability. The machinery operates around the clock, never tiring, never making the small errors that human hands might introduce, never requiring breaks or benefits or time off. It's a marvel of engineering that represents humanity's greatest achievement, the creation of machines that can do our work better than we can do it ourselves. Yet, scattered throughout this automated paradise, you notice something curious. Human technicians move among the machines, monitoring displays, adjusting parameters, troubleshooting problems that the automated systems cannot solve themselves. These workers must understand the automated processes more deeply than the original manual workers ever understood their tasks. They need broader knowledge, more sophisticated skills, and the ability to think at a higher level of abstraction about complex interdependent systems. The automation that was supposed to reduce the need for human skill has instead created the need for different kinds of human skills, often more demanding ones. The technology meant to make work easier has made some work more cognitively challenging. The machines designed to replace human workers have created new categories of human work that didn't exist before. This is the essence of the paradox of automation, one of the most counterintuitive aspects of technological progress. As we automate more processes, we don't simply eliminate human involvement. We often transform it into something more complex, more demanding, and more critical to the overall system's functioning. The very success of automation creates new dependencies on human capabilities that are harder to develop and maintain than the original manual skills automation replaced. The paradox reveals itself most clearly in what researchers call the automation bias, our tendency to over-rely on automated systems even when they're producing errors or operating outside their design parameters. As systems become more automated and reliable, human operators become less engaged with the underlying processes, less aware of system states, and less capable of recognizing when automation is failing. Consider Sarah, an airline pilot flying a modern commercial aircraft equipped with sophisticated autopilot systems. For most of the flight, the plane essentially flies itself, navigating with GPS precision, maintaining optimal altitudes and speeds, and even performing automated landings in good weather conditions. Sarah monitors the systems, inputs commands, and manages the flight plan. But the actual flying is handled by computers far more reliably than any human pilot could manage. This automation has made flying safer and more efficient, but it has also created new challenges for pilot training and skill maintenance. When automation works perfectly most of the time, pilots get less practice with manual flying skills. When rare emergencies occur that require taking over from automated systems, pilots must instantly transition from system monitoring to hands-on control of complex situations they may have encountered only in simulators. The result is that automation has made flying safer in routine conditions, but potentially more dangerous in the exceptional circumstances when human intervention is most needed. The skills required to be an effective pilot in an automated aircraft are different from and arguably more demanding than the skills required to fly manually, yet they're harder to maintain through practice because automation handles most flight operations. This pattern repeats across industries and contexts where automation has been introduced. Medical diagnostic systems can analyze vast amounts of data and identify patterns that human doctors might miss. Yet, doctors using these systems must develop new skills in interpreting algorithmic recommendations, understanding the limitations of automated analysis, and maintaining their clinical intuition for situations the algorithms weren't designed to handle. The paradox of automation extends beyond professional settings into the realm of daily life. GPS navigation systems have made it virtually impossible to get lost. Yet they've also made many people incapable of navigating without technological assistance. The automation that eliminated the inconvenience of wrong turns has also eliminated the skill development that comes from learning to read maps, understand spatial relationships, and maintain awareness of one's environment. When GPS systems fail, provide incorrect directions, or encounter situations they weren't programmed to handle, users are often more lost than they would have been in the pre-GPS era. The automation that was meant to make navigation foolproof has sometimes made fools of navigators by creating dependencies that are invisible until the automated system fails. The paradox becomes even more complex when we consider how automation affects learning and skill development. Many automated systems are designed to reduce the need for users to understand underlying processes. You don't need to understand internal combustion engines to drive a car with automatic transmission, or understand network protocols to use the internet, or understand financial algorithms to use automated investment services. This abstraction of complexity makes technology more accessible and user-friendly, but it can also create a form of learned helplessness when automated systems don't work as expected. The user, who doesn't understand how their automated tools function, is powerless to troubleshoot, modify, or improve those tools when circumstances change. The educational implications of the automation paradox are particularly profound. Calculators were introduced to free students from the tedium of arithmetic so they could focus on higher-level mathematical concepts. Yet many educators now worry that students who rely too heavily on calculators never develop the number sense and mental math skills that provide intuition about whether their calculated answers are reasonable. Spell check and grammar check software were designed to help writers focus on content rather than mechanics. Yet some research suggests that heavy reliance on these tools may impede the development of natural language skills that come from actively engaging with the mechanics of the automation paradox. Also intersects with issues of trust and accountability. As systems become more automated, it becomes more difficult to understand why particular decisions were made or outcomes occurred. The machine learning algorithm that makes hiring recommendations or loan decisions may be more accurate than human decision makers, but its reasoning process may be opaque even to its creators. This opacity can make it difficult to identify when automated systems are making errors, to correct those errors, or to assign accountability when automated decisions cause harm. The automation that was meant to make decision-making more objective and reliable can sometimes make it less transparent and accountable. The global implications of the automation paradox raise questions about economic development and technological dependence. Developing countries that skip intermediate technological stages to adopt the latest automated systems may gain efficiency but miss opportunities to develop the human skills and institutional knowledge that come from working with less automated predecessors. A country that adopts fully automated manufacturing without going through earlier phases of industrial development may find itself dependent on external technical expertise and unable to innovate or adapt when circumstances change. The automation that provides immediate capability may inhibit the development of indigenous expertise and resilience. As we contemplate the automation paradox, we might ask ourselves, how do we design automated systems that enhance human capability rather than replacing it? How do we maintain human skills and engagement in increasingly automated environments? How do we ensure that automation serves human flourishing rather than creating new forms of dependence and vulnerability? The paradox suggests that the most successful approaches to automation might be those that treat humans and machines as complementary rather than substitutable. Instead of asking, what can machines do better than humans, we might ask, how can machines amplify human capabilities? Instead of designing systems that eliminate human involvement, we might design systems that enhance human judgment, creativity, and problem-solving. This might mean creating automation that provides information and recommendations rather than making decisions, that augments human capabilities rather than replacing them, that maintains opportunities for human learning and skill development rather than eliminating them. It might mean designing automated systems with transparent reasoning processes that humans can understand and override when necessary. The automation paradox also suggests the importance of maintaining redundancy in critical systems, preserving human capabilities even when automated alternatives are more efficient. Just as biological systems maintain seemingly redundant capabilities that prove essential during crises, human systems might benefit from maintaining manual capabilities and human expertise even when automated alternatives are superior under normal conditions. The paradox invites us to think about automation not as a simple replacement of human work with machine work, but as a complex transformation of the relationship between humans and their tools. The question isn't whether to automate, but how to automate in ways that preserve and enhance what is most valuable about human capability while leveraging what is most powerful about machine capability. The paradox of automation whispers to us that in our rush to create machines that can do our work, we must not forget that some forms of human engagement with work are irreplaceable, not because machines can't perform the tasks, but because the human experience of mastering, creating, and problem-solving is itself a fundamental source of meaning, competence, and resilience. In the end, the most profound automation may not be the elimination of human work, but the elevation of human work to levels of creativity, judgment, and meaning that only become possible when machines handle the routine and predictable, freeing humans to engage with the novel, complex, and fundamentally human aspects of existence. The leisure paradox. Imagine yourself on a perfect Saturday morning, with nothing you must do and everything you might want to do stretching out before you like an open road. No meetings to attend, no deadlines to meet, no responsibilities demanding your immediate attention. This is the dream of leisure, unstructured time filled with possibilities for rest, recreation, and personal fulfillment. You've worked hard to earn this freedom, and now it's yours to enjoy. Yet, as you sit with your coffee, scrolling through endless options for how to spend your day, something unexpected happens. The abundance of choice becomes overwhelming. You could read that book you've been meaning to start, take a long walk in nature, call an old friend, work on a creative project, explore a new neighborhood, or simply relax and do nothing at all. Each option sounds appealing in theory, but somehow none feels quite right in practice. Hours pass as you consider and reconsider your options. Check social media to see how others are spending their free time, and wrestle with a strange anxiety about wasting this precious opportunity for leisure. By evening, you realize you've spent your day of freedom feeling vaguely anxious and unfulfilled, neither fully resting nor engaging in meaningful activity. The leisure you longed for has somehow become another source of stress. This is the heart of the leisure paradox, one of the most counterintuitive aspects of modern life. We work tirelessly to create space for leisure in our lives, yet when we finally have access to that leisure, we often struggle to use it in ways that feel genuinely satisfying. The free time we desperately crave can become a source of anxiety, guilt, and ennui. The leisure that's supposed to restore and fulfill us sometimes leaves us feeling more restless and dissatisfied than productive work ever did. The paradox begins with our conflicted relationship with time itself. In a culture that equates value with productivity, unstructured time can feel simultaneously precious and wasteful. We know intellectually that rest and recreation are important for our well-being, yet we've internalized messages that idle time is lazy time, that every moment should contribute to some form of progress or achievement. Consider David, a successful architect who has worked 60-hour weeks for years while dreaming of having more time to pursue his photography hobby. When he finally takes a sabbatical to focus on creative pursuits, he finds himself paralyzed by the sudden absence of external structure and deadlines. Without the clear frameworks that organized his professional life, his creative time feels shapeless and directionless. The freedom he craved has become its own form of prison. David's experience illustrates how work, despite its stresses and limitations, provides valuable psychological benefits that leisure often lacks. Work offers clear objectives, immediate feedback, social interaction, and a sense of progress and accomplishment. Leisure, by contrast, is often unstructured, self-directed, and lacks built-in reward systems. The very qualities that make leisure theoretically appealing, its openness and freedom, can make it practically challenging to navigate. The leisure paradox is compounded by what researchers call the hedonic treadmill, our tendency to adapt to positive experiences in ways that diminish their impact over time. The vacation that seemed so appealing in prospect may become routine once we're experiencing it. The hobby that promised deep satisfaction may lose its appeal once it becomes easily accessible. The leisure activities that once provided escape and rejuvenation can become mundane when they're no longer rare and special. This adaptation effect means that simply having more leisure time doesn't necessarily translate into greater happiness or life satisfaction. In fact, studies have shown that people often enjoy leisure activities more when they're constrained by time scarcity than when they have unlimited access to them. The weekend warrior who treasures their few hours of hiking may find more joy in the activity than the retired person who can hike whenever they want. The paradox also manifests in how we've transformed leisure activities into forms of work. The runner who once jogged for pleasure now tracks every mile, monitors their heart rate, and optimizes their performance through data analysis. The gardener who once found peace in tending plants now researches optimal growing conditions, schedules planting cycles, and measures yields. The photographer who once captured moments spontaneously now studies composition techniques, invests in professional equipment, and curates their work for social media presentation. These transformations aren't inherently negative, but they illustrate how our productivity-oriented culture seeps into leisure activities, potentially robbing them of the very qualities that made them restorative in the first place. The leisure that was meant to provide relief from the demands of optimization and measurement becomes subject to those same demands. Social media has intensified the leisure paradox by creating new pressures around how we spend our free time. Leisure activities become content to be shared, experiences to be documented, and lifestyles to be curated. The pressure to make leisure look meaningful and enviable can transform genuine rest into performative relaxation. The person lying on a beach may spend more mental energy crafting the perfect Instagram post about their relaxation than actually relaxing. This documentation imperative can fragment leisure experiences, pulling attention away from immediate enjoyment toward future presentation. The hiker focused on capturing the perfect sunset photo may miss the actual experience of watching the sunset. The vacationer planning their social media posts may be less present for the very experiences they're trying to celebrate. The leisure paradox becomes particularly acute for high achievers and Type A personalities who have built their identities around productivity and accomplishment. When these individuals encounter unstructured leisure time, they may experience what psychologists call leisure anxiety, discomfort with the absence of clear goals, measurable progress, or external validation. The executive who thrives under pressure may feel lost during a peaceful vacation. The student who excels in structured academic environments may struggle with summer break. The entrepreneur who finds meaning in building businesses may feel purposeless during retirement. The skills and mindsets that serve them well in productive contexts can become obstacles to enjoying leisure. The temporal dimensions of the leisure paradox reveal additional complexities. We often anticipate leisure more than we enjoy it while it's happening, and remember it more fondly than we experienced it in real time. The vacation that feels stressful while you're planning it, and occasionally disappointing while you're living it, may become a cherished memory that you look back on with nostalgia. This temporal distortion suggests that leisure serves different psychological functions at different times. The anticipation of leisure provides hope and motivation during difficult work periods. The memory of leisure provides a sense of richness and variety when life feels routine. But the actual experience of leisure may be less consistently positive than either its anticipation or its recollection. The economic aspects of the leisure paradox add another layer of complexity. As societies become wealthier and technology reduces the need for manual labor, people theoretically have more time and resources available for leisure. Yet many people report feeling busier and more stressed than ever, even as their material circumstances improve and their work becomes less physically demanding. This suggests that the challenge isn't simply having enough time or money for leisure, but developing the skills and mindset necessary to use leisure well. The capacity for meaningful leisure, the ability to rest deeply, play authentically, and engage in activities purely for their own sake, may be a skill that requires cultivation rather than something that emerges naturally when external constraints are removed. The leisure paradox also intersects with deeper questions about meaning and purpose. Work, despite its challenges, often provides a sense of contribution and impact that leisure activities may lack. The person who finds deep satisfaction in helping others through their professional work may struggle to find equal meaning in purely personal leisure activities. The absence of external purpose in leisure can create existential anxiety rather than existential fulfillment. This doesn't mean that leisure is inherently less meaningful than work, but rather that finding meaning in leisure may require different skills and perspectives than finding meaning in productive activities. The meaning in leisure may come from presence rather than progress, from being rather than doing, from internal satisfaction rather than external impact. Cultural and generational differences add complexity to the leisure paradox. Some cultures have rich traditions of contemplation, celebration, and communal leisure that provide frameworks for meaningful, non-productive time. Other cultures, particularly those with strong work ethics, may lack these frameworks, leaving individuals to navigate leisure without cultural guidance or support. Younger generations who have grown up with constant stimulation and connectivity may find traditional forms of leisure, quiet contemplation, unstructured time, activities without digital enhancement, particularly challenging. The person accustomed to constant input and interaction may experience silence and solitude as uncomfortable rather than restorative. The leisure paradox is further complicated by the fact that true leisure may require giving up control and embracing uncertainty in ways that our achievement-oriented culture doesn't prepare us for. The most restorative leisure experiences often involve surrendering to the present moment, accepting imperfection, and finding joy in activities that serve no external purpose. The child building sandcastles that will be washed away by the tide experiences pure leisure, engagement without attachment to outcomes, creativity without pressure to produce, joy without justification. Adults seeking similar leisure experiences may need to unlearn habits of mind that treat every activity as a means to some end rather than an end in itself. The role of community in leisure reveals another dimension of the paradox. Many of the most satisfying leisure experiences are social, sharing meals, playing games, engaging in conversation, participating in celebrations. Yet modern life often isolates leisure into individual activities consumed privately. The person streaming movies alone in their living room may have access to more entertainment than any previous generation, yet feel less satisfied than someone sharing simpler pleasures with friends and family. This suggests that the leisure paradox may be partly a community paradox, that leisure becomes most meaningful when the automation paradox also intersects with issues of trust and accountability. As systems become more automated, it becomes more difficult to understand why particular decisions were made or outcomes occurred. The machine learning algorithm that makes hiring recommendations or loan decisions may be more accurate than human decision makers, but its reasoning process may be opaque even to its creators. This opacity can make it difficult to identify when automated systems are making errors, to correct those errors, or to assign accountability when automated decisions cause harm. The automation that was meant to make decision-making more objective and reliable can sometimes make it less transparent and accountable. The global implications of the automation paradox raise questions about economic development and technological dependence. Developing countries that skip intermediate technological stages to adopt the latest automated systems may gain efficiency but miss opportunities to develop the human skills and institutional knowledge that come from working with less automated predecessors. A country that adopts fully automated manufacturing without going through earlier phases of industrial development may find itself dependent on external technical expertise and unable to innovate or adapt when circumstances change. The automation that provides immediate capability may inhibit the development of indigenous expertise and resilience. As we contemplate the automation paradox, we might ask ourselves, how do we design automated systems that enhance human capability rather than replacing it? How do we maintain human skills and engagement in increasingly automated environments? How do we ensure that automation serves human flourishing rather than creating new forms of dependence and vulnerability? The paradox suggests that the most successful approaches to automation might be those that treat humans and machines as complementary rather than substitutable. Instead of asking, what can machines do better than humans, we might ask, how can machines amplify human capabilities? Instead of designing systems that eliminate human involvement, we might design systems that enhance human judgment, creativity, and problem-solving. This might mean creating automation that provides information and recommendations rather than making decisions, that augments human capabilities rather than replacing them, that maintains opportunities for human learning and skill development rather than eliminating them. It might mean designing automated systems with transparent reasoning processes that humans can understand and override when necessary. The automation paradox also suggests the importance of maintaining redundancy in critical systems, preserving human capabilities even when automated alternatives are more efficient. Just as biological systems maintain seemingly redundant capabilities that prove essential during crises, human systems might benefit from maintaining manual capabilities and human expertise even when automated alternatives are superior under normal conditions. The paradox invites us to think about automation not as a simple replacement of human work with machine work, but as a complex transformation of the relationship between humans and their tools. The question isn't whether to automate, but how to automate in ways that preserve and enhance what is most valuable about human capability while leveraging what is most powerful about machine capability. The paradox of automation whispers to us that in our rush to create machines that can do our work, we must not forget that some forms of human engagement with work are irreplaceable, not because machines can't perform the tasks, but because the human experience of mastering, creating, and problem-solving is itself a fundamental source of meaning, competence, and resilience. In the end, the most profound automation may not be the elimination of human work, but the elevation of human work to levels of creativity, judgment, and meaning that only become possible when machines handle the routine and predictable, freeing humans to engage with the novel, complex, and fundamentally human aspects of existence. The leisure paradox. Imagine yourself on a perfect Saturday morning, with nothing you must do and everything you might want to do stretching out before you like an open road. No meetings to attend, no deadlines to meet, no responsibilities demanding your immediate attention. This is the dream of leisure, unstructured time filled with possibilities for rest, recreation, and personal fulfillment. You've worked hard to earn this freedom, and now it's yours to enjoy. Yet, as you sit with your coffee, scrolling through endless options for how to spend your day, something unexpected happens. The abundance of choice becomes overwhelming. You could read that book you've been meaning to start, take a long walk in nature, call an old friend, work on a creative project, explore a new neighborhood, or simply relax and do nothing at all. Each option sounds appealing in theory, but somehow none feels quite right in practice. Hours pass as you consider and reconsider your options. Check social media to see how others are spending their free time, and wrestle with a strange anxiety about wasting this precious opportunity for leisure. By evening, you realize you've spent your day of freedom feeling vaguely anxious and unfulfilled, neither fully resting nor engaging in meaningful activity. The leisure you longed for has somehow become another source of stress. This is the heart of the leisure paradox, one of the most counterintuitive aspects of modern life. We work tirelessly to create space for leisure in our lives, yet when we finally have access to that leisure, we often struggle to use it in ways that feel genuinely satisfying. The free time we desperately crave can become a source of anxiety, guilt, and ennui. The leisure that's supposed to restore and fulfill us sometimes leaves us feeling more restless and dissatisfied than productive work ever did. The paradox begins with our conflicted relationship with time itself. In a culture that equates value with productivity, unstructured time can feel simultaneously precious and wasteful. We know intellectually that rest and recreation are important for our well-being, yet we've internalized messages that idle time is lazy time, that every moment should contribute to some form of progress or achievement. Consider David, a successful architect who has worked 60-hour weeks for years while dreaming of having more time to pursue his photography hobby. When he finally takes a sabbatical to focus on creative pursuits, he finds himself paralyzed by the sudden absence of external structure and deadlines. Without the clear frameworks that organized his professional life, his creative time feels shapeless and directionless. The freedom he craved has become its own form of prison. David's experience illustrates how work, despite its stresses and limitations, provides valuable psychological benefits that leisure often lacks. Work offers clear objectives, immediate feedback, social interaction, and a sense of progress and accomplishment. Leisure, by contrast, is often unstructured, self-directed, and lacks built-in reward systems. The very qualities that make leisure theoretically appealing, its openness and freedom, can make it practically challenging to navigate. The leisure paradox is compounded by what researchers call the hedonic treadmill, our tendency to adapt to positive experiences in ways that diminish their impact over time. The vacation that seemed so appealing in prospect may become routine once we're experiencing it. The hobby that promised deep satisfaction may lose its appeal once it becomes easily accessible. The leisure activities that once provided escape and rejuvenation can become mundane when they're no longer rare and special. This adaptation effect means that simply having more leisure time doesn't necessarily translate into greater happiness or life satisfaction. In fact, studies have shown that people often enjoy leisure activities more when they're constrained by time scarcity than when they have unlimited access to them. The weekend warrior who treasures their few hours of hiking may find more joy in the activity than the retired person who can hike whenever they want. The paradox also manifests in how we've transformed leisure activities into forms of work. The runner who once jogged for pleasure now tracks every mile, monitors their heart rate, and optimizes their performance through data analysis. The gardener who once found peace in tending plants now researches optimal growing conditions, schedules planting cycles, and measures yields. The photographer who once captured moments spontaneously now studies composition techniques, invests in professional equipment, and curates their work for social media presentation. These transformations aren't inherently negative, but they illustrate how our productivity-oriented culture seeps into leisure activities, potentially robbing them of the very qualities that made them restorative in the first place. The leisure that was meant to provide relief from the demands of optimization and measurement becomes subject to those same demands. Social media has intensified the leisure paradox by creating new pressures around how we spend our free time. Leisure activities become content to be shared, experiences to be documented, and lifestyles to be curated. The pressure to make leisure look meaningful and enviable can transform genuine rest into performative relaxation. The person lying on a beach may spend more mental energy crafting the perfect Instagram post about their relaxation than actually relaxing. This documentation imperative can fragment leisure experiences, pulling attention away from immediate enjoyment toward future presentation. The hiker focused on capturing the perfect sunset photo may miss the actual experience of watching the sunset. The vacationer planning their social media posts may be less present for the very experiences they're trying to celebrate. The leisure paradox becomes particularly acute for high achievers and Type A personalities who have built their identities around productivity and accomplishment. When these individuals encounter unstructured leisure time, they may experience what psychologists call leisure anxiety. discomfort with the absence of clear goals, measurable progress, or external validation. The executive who thrives under pressure may feel lost during a peaceful vacation. The student who excels in structured academic environments may struggle with summer break. The entrepreneur who finds meaning in building businesses may feel purposeless during retirement. The skills and mindsets that serve them well in productive contexts can become obstacles to enjoying leisure. The temporal dimensions of the leisure paradox reveal additional complexities. We often anticipate leisure more than we enjoy it while it's happening, and remember it more fondly than we experienced it in real time. The vacation that feels stressful while you're planning it, and occasionally disappointing while you're living it, may become a cherished memory that you look back on with nostalgia. This temporal distortion suggests that leisure serves different psychological functions at different times. The anticipation of leisure provides hope and motivation during difficult work periods. The memory of leisure provides a sense of richness and variety when life feels routine. But the actual experience of leisure may be less consistently positive than either its anticipation or its recollection. The economic aspects of the leisure paradox add another layer of complexity. As societies become wealthier and technology reduces the need for manual labor, people theoretically have more time and resources available for leisure. Yet many people report feeling busier and more stressed than ever, even as their material circumstances improve and their work becomes less physically demanding. This suggests that the challenge isn't simply having enough time or money for leisure, but developing the skills and mindset necessary to use leisure well. The capacity for meaningful leisure, the ability to rest deeply, play authentically, and engage in activities purely for their own sake, may be a skill that requires cultivation rather than something that emerges naturally when external constraints are removed. The leisure paradox also intersects with deeper questions about meaning and purpose. Work, despite its challenges, often provides a sense of contribution and impact that leisure activities may lack. The person who finds deep satisfaction in helping others through their professional work may struggle to find equal meaning in purely personal leisure activities. The absence of external purpose in leisure can create existential anxiety rather than existential fulfillment. This doesn't mean that leisure is inherently less meaningful than work, but rather that finding meaning in leisure may require different skills and perspectives than finding meaning in productive activities. The meaning in leisure may come from presence rather than progress, from being rather than doing, from internal satisfaction rather than external impact. Cultural and generational differences add complexity to the leisure paradox. Some cultures have rich traditions of contemplation, celebration, and communal leisure that provide frameworks for meaningful, non-productive time. Other cultures, particularly those with strong work ethics, may lack these frameworks, leaving individuals to navigate leisure without cultural guidance or support. Younger generations who have grown up with constant stimulation and connectivity may find traditional forms of leisure, quiet contemplation, unstructured time, activities without digital enhancement, particularly challenging. The person accustomed to constant input and interaction may experience silence and solitude as uncomfortable rather than restorative. The leisure paradox is further complicated by the fact that true leisure may require giving up control and embracing uncertainty in ways that our achievement-oriented culture doesn't prepare us for. The most restorative leisure experiences often involve surrendering to the present moment, accepting imperfection, and finding joy in activities that serve no external purpose. The child building sandcastles that will be washed away by the tide experiences pure leisure, engagement without attachment to outcomes, creativity without pressure to produce, joy without justification. Adults seeking similar leisure experiences may need to unlearn habits of mind that treat every activity as a means to some end rather than an end in itself. The role of community in leisure reveals another dimension of the paradox. Many of the most satisfying leisure experiences are social, sharing meals, playing games, engaging in conversation, participating in celebrations. Yet modern life often isolates leisure into individual activities consumed privately. The person streaming movies alone in their living room may have access to more entertainment than any previous generation, yet feel less satisfied than someone sharing simpler pleasures with friends and family. This suggests that the leisure paradox may be partly a community paradox, that leisure becomes the busyness paradox. Picture yourself rushing through the corridors of your life, phone pressed to your ear, calendar packed with back-to-back meetings, to-do list growing faster than you can check items off. Your days blur together in a whirlwind of activity, emails answered while walking, lunch eaten at your desk, conversations interrupted by urgent notifications demanding immediate attention. You're constantly in motion, perpetually engaged, relentlessly busy. When people ask how you're doing, you respond with that familiar refrain: busy, so busy. And there's a strange pride in this response, isn't there? A sense that your busyness validates your importance, proves your value, demonstrates that you're fully engaged with the vital work of living. In our culture, busy has become synonymous with important, with successful, with fully alive. Yet, in the quiet moments between activities, if such moments still exist, something unsettling emerges. Despite all this motion, you may feel strangely motionless. Despite all this activity, you may feel curiously inactive. Despite filling every moment with doing, you may wonder if you're actually accomplishing anything meaningful at all. The busyness that was supposed to prove your significance may leave you feeling surprisingly insignificant. This is the busyness paradox, one of the most pervasive contradictions of modern existence. We equate being busy with being productive, being important, being successful. We've transformed busyness from a temporary state into a permanent identity, from a means to an end into an end in itself. Yet the more relentlessly busy we become, the less clear it becomes what all this busyness is ultimately for. The paradox begins with a fundamental confusion between motion and progress, between activity and accomplishment, between being busy and being effective. We assume that if we're constantly doing something, we must be getting somewhere. We believe that if our days are full, our lives must be full. We think that if we're never idle, we must be making the most of our time. But busyness and productivity are not the same thing. Busyness is about the volume of activity. Productivity is about the value of outcomes. You can be extremely busy responding to emails that don't matter, attending meetings that accomplish nothing, and completing tasks that serve no meaningful purpose. The person who spends their day in frantic activity may accomplish less than the person who spends an hour in focused, intentional work. Consider Rachel, a marketing manager who prides herself on her busyness. Her calendar is packed from morning until evening with meetings, calls, and appointments. She responds to emails within minutes, manages multiple projects simultaneously, and is always available for urgent requests. By any external measure, she's incredibly busy and seemingly productive. Yet, when Rachel reflects on her actual accomplishments, she struggles to identify meaningful outcomes from all her activity. Many of her meetings could have been emails, many of her emails didn't require responses, and many of her urgent tasks turned out to be less important than they initially seemed. Her busyness has become a sophisticated form of procrastination, preventing her from focusing on the work that would actually make a difference. The busyness paradox is deeply intertwined with status and identity in modern culture. Busyness has become a form of social currency, a way of signaling importance and value to others and to ourselves. When we say we're busy, we're implicitly saying we're needed, wanted, essential. Our packed schedules become evidence of our significance. This creates a psychological trap where we become addicted to busyness not because it serves our goals, but because it serves our ego. The person who isn't busy may feel unimportant, forgotten, irrelevant. So we seek out busyness, create busyness, and maintain busyness even when it doesn't serve our actual interests or values. The digital revolution has intensified the busyness paradox by making it possible to be busy anywhere at any time. Our devices ensure that work can follow us home. that urgent requests can interrupt our leisure, that the boundary between busy and not busy has effectively dissolved. We can now be busy checking social media, busy responding to notifications, busy managing our digital lives even when we're not busy with traditional work. This digital busyness often feels productive because it involves constant interaction and response, but it may actually be the most unproductive form of busyness. The person who spends their evening mindlessly scrolling through feeds, responding to messages, and managing their online presence may feel busy but accomplish nothing meaningful for their actual goals or relationships. The busyness paradox also manifests in how we structure our time and make decisions about priorities. When we're constantly busy, we often lose the capacity for strategic thinking about what's most important. We become reactive rather than proactive, responding to whatever demand is most immediate rather than focusing on what would be most valuable. This reactive busyness creates a vicious cycle. The busier we become, the less time we have for reflection and planning. The less time we have for reflection and planning, the more likely we are to make poor choices about how to spend our time. These poor choices create more problems that require urgent attention, making us even busier in ways that are less and less meaningful. The person trapped in this cycle may find themselves working harder and harder while feeling like they're getting further and further behind. They're busy solving problems they created through their busyness, managing crises that emerged from their lack of strategic focus, and catching up on work they didn't have time to do properly the first time because they were too busy. The psychological costs of chronic busyness extend far beyond simple stress or time pressure. Constant busyness can erode our capacity for deep thinking, creative insight, and meaningful relationships. When our minds are always occupied with the next task, the next meeting, the next urgent demand, we lose access to the mental space where our best ideas emerge and our most important realizations occur. The breakthrough insight that solves a complex problem often comes during a quiet walk, a leisurely shower, or a moment of genuine rest. The creative solution that transforms a project may emerge not during frantic brainstorming sessions, but during unstructured reflection. Yet chronic busyness systematically eliminates these generative moments, replacing them with an endless stream of reactive activity. The busyness paradox also affects our relationships with others. When we're constantly busy, our interactions become hurried and superficial. We're physically present but mentally elsewhere, thinking about the next item on our schedule while trying to engage with the person in front of us. The busy person may have many social interactions but few genuine connections, many conversations but little real communication. This relationship between busyness and social connection creates its own paradoxes. We may stay busy partly to maintain our social and professional networks, attending events, responding to messages, participating in activities that keep us connected to others. Yet the very busyness that's meant to maintain these connections may prevent us from enjoying them deeply or meaningfully. The family dinner interrupted by work calls, the friendship maintained only through hurried texts, the romantic relationship scheduled between other obligations. These become casualties of busyness that was supposedly justified by the importance of maintaining relationships and responsibilities. The busyness paradox has economic and organizational dimensions that extend beyond individual psychology. Many workplaces have developed cultures that equate busyness with productivity, presence with performance, and long hours with commitment. These cultures can create environments where people feel pressure to appear busy even when they're not accomplishing meaningful work. This busyness theater can become more important than actual results. The employee who works late every night may be perceived as more dedicated than the employee who completes their work efficiently during regular hours. The manager who fills their team's schedules with meetings may be seen as more engaged than the manager who trusts their team to work independently. These organizational cultures can create collective busyness that reduces overall productivity while increasing individual stress. Teams spend time in unnecessary meetings discussing work they could be doing, create complex processes that require more coordination than value, and develop bureaucracies that generate activity without generating results. The global nature of modern work has intensified organizational busyness by extending the workday across time zones and eliminating natural boundaries between work and rest. The person who can receive emails from colleagues in different continents at any hour may feel obligated to respond immediately, creating a sense of constant urgency that makes genuine rest impossible. This always-on culture transforms normal work into urgent work, and urgent work into crisis work. Everything becomes immediate, everything becomes important, and the ability to distinguish between truly urgent matters and routine requests gets lost in the noise of constant demands for attention. The busyness paradox also intersects with deeper questions about meaning and purpose. When we're constantly busy, we may avoid confronting fundamental questions about what we actually want from life, what values we want to embody, and what legacy we want to create. Busyness can become a form of existential avoidance, keeping us too distracted to examine whether our lives are aligned with our deepest intentions. The busy person may never have time to ask whether their busyness serves their actual goals or simply perpetuates itself for its own sake. They may never have space to consider whether they're living the life they want to live or simply the life that circumstances and habits have created for them. This avoidance of reflection can trap people in patterns of busyness that don't serve their authentic interests or values. The lawyer who works 80-hour weeks may never have time to consider whether they actually enjoy law or simply fear the uncertainty of changing careers. The parent who schedules every moment of their child's time may never pause to wonder whether this busyness is actually beneficial for their child's development. The environmental and sustainability implications of chronic busyness add another layer to the paradox. A culture of busyness often promotes consumption over conservation, convenience over sustainability, and immediate gratification over long-term thinking. The busy person may choose the minimalism paradox. Picture yourself standing in a pristine white room where every surface gleams with emptiness. Every corner breathes with space. Every object has been carefully chosen for both function and beauty. The morning light streams through unadorned windows, illuminating a single wooden chair, a carefully placed plant, and perhaps 3 books stacked with architectural precision on a floating shelf. This is the minimalist dream made manifest. A life stripped of excess, freed from clutter, organized around the essential few things that truly matter. You've spent months getting here, methodically removing possessions that no longer spark joy or serve a purpose. You've donated bags of clothing, sold furniture that merely filled space, and digitized documents that once crowded drawers and filing cabinets. The process was liberating. Each eliminated item a weight lifted from your shoulders, each cleared surface a breath of fresh mental air. You were pursuing the promise of minimalism, that by owning less, you would somehow become more. Yet, as you stand in this carefully curated emptiness, something unexpected begins to emerge. The simple life you've created requires surprisingly complex maintenance. You find yourself spending significant time researching the perfect multifunctional object before making any purchase, reading reviews and comparing options with an intensity you never brought to shopping when you simply bought what you needed. The closet you once filled thoughtlessly now demands careful consideration of each item's quality, versatility, and longevity. This is the heart of the minimalism paradox, and it reveals something profound about our relationship with both possession and emptiness, abundance and scarcity, having and not having. The movement that promised to simplify life by reducing choices has, for many practitioners, created new and more complex forms of decision-making. The philosophy that claimed to free us from material concerns has sometimes made us more preoccupied with our material choices than we ever were when we simply accumulated without strategy. The paradox begins with the fundamental tension between minimalism as a practice and minimalism as an identity. When owning fewer things becomes a defining characteristic of who you are, the absence of possessions paradoxically becomes a kind of possession itself. Your empty shelves become something to maintain, your sparse closet becomes something to curate. your minimal lifestyle becomes something to manage and perform. Consider Elena, a graphic designer who embraced minimalism after feeling overwhelmed by the clutter in her small apartment. She systematically reduced her belongings from thousands of items to fewer than 100 carefully chosen pieces. Each object in her space now serves multiple purposes and reflects her aesthetic values. Her apartment has been featured in design blogs and admired by friends who describe it as peaceful and inspiring. Yet, Elena finds that maintaining this minimal lifestyle requires constant vigilance and decision-making that her previous, more cluttered existence never demanded. Before minimalism, she might have owned 5 mediocre winter coats. Now she owns one excellent coat that must function in all weather conditions, represent her personal style, and last for years. The research, comparison shopping, and careful consideration that went into selecting this single coat far exceeded the mental energy she ever spent on clothing when she simply bought coats as she needed them. The minimalism paradox manifests most clearly in what researchers might call optimization anxiety, the pressure to make every possession perfect because there are so few of them. When you own 30 books, one mediocre selection doesn't significantly impact your library. When you own 3 books, each one carries enormous weight. The book that doesn't deliver on its promise becomes not just a disappointing read, but a failure of curation, a crack in the minimalist facade you've worked to create. This pressure for perfection can make the minimalist more anxious about their choices, not less. The person with a packed closet might grab any black shirt for a meeting. The minimalist with 3 carefully chosen shirts must select the optimal shirt for each occasion, considering factors like weather, formality, and how recently each shirt was worn. The reduction in quantity has increased the complexity of decision-making rather than simplifying it. The paradox extends into the realm of consumption patterns and shopping behavior. Traditional consumption is often impulsive and immediate. You see something you like or need, and you buy it. Minimalist consumption, by contrast, tends to be researched and delayed. The minimalist might spend weeks evaluating the perfect coffee maker, reading reviews, watching comparison videos, and seeking recommendations from fellow minimalists. This extended research process can become a form of consumption itself, consuming time, mental energy, and attention that was supposedly freed by owning fewer things. The minimalist lifestyle that promised to reduce the mental load of material decisions has sometimes increased it, creating new categories of research, evaluation, and optimization that never existed in less intentional approaches to ownership. The social media aspect of minimalism adds another layer to the paradox. Platforms like Instagram and YouTube are filled with minimalist influencers showcasing their sparse, carefully curated spaces. The aesthetic of emptiness becomes content to be consumed. Emptiness becomes a form of abundance, and not having becomes a way of having something to share. This digital documentation of minimal living can transform the practice into performance. The minimalist might find themselves arranging their few possessions for photos, buying new minimal items to refresh their aesthetic, or feeling pressure to maintain a level of visual simplicity that serves social media rather than personal well-being. The practice meant to free them from material concerns becomes entangled with digital validation and aesthetic competition. The minimalism paradox also appears in the relationship between minimalism and consumption. While minimalists own fewer items, the items they do own often cost more per piece than their non-minimalist alternatives. The strategy of buying fewer, higher-quality items can result in spending as much or more money overall. The minimalist's single, expensive winter coat might cost more than the non-minimalist's collection of seasonal coats purchased over several years. This premium pricing of minimal living can create economic pressure that contradicts minimalism's promise of financial freedom. The minimalist might find themselves spending more time working to afford their carefully chosen few possessions than they would have spent managing a larger collection of less expensive items. The lifestyle designed to provide more freedom through less stuff can sometimes provide less freedom through expensive stuff. The temporal dimensions of the minimalism paradox reveal additional complexities. Minimalism requires significant upfront investment of time and energy, researching what to keep, deciding what to eliminate, and finding homes for discarded items. This initial investment is supposed to pay dividends in reduced maintenance and decision-making over time. Yet many minimalists discover that the lifestyle requires ongoing maintenance that traditional accumulation doesn't demand. Items must be regularly evaluated for continued relevance. Possessions must be monitored for wear and replaced proactively rather than reactively. The minimal wardrobe requires seasonal assessment and careful rotation. The sparse kitchen demands planning to ensure that the few tools available can handle upcoming cooking projects. The time saved by having fewer things to manage gets reallocated to more intensive management of the things that remain. It's like the difference between maintaining a large garden with casual attention and maintaining a small garden with intensive care. Both approaches require work, but the nature of the work is fundamentally different. The minimalism paradox intersects with deeper psychological questions about scarcity and abundance mindsets. Minimalism is often framed as an abundance practice. You have so much that you can afford to let go of most of it, keeping only what brings genuine value. Yet the practice can sometimes create a scarcity mindset where every possession becomes precious because there are so few of them. The minimalist with 3 plates might feel more anxiety about breaking one than the non-minimalist with 12 plates would feel about losing several. The scarcity of options can make each remaining option feel more precious and vulnerable. The mindset that was supposed to create abundance through intentional scarcity sometimes creates anxiety through actual scarcity. This scarcity anxiety can extend beyond possessions into experiences and relationships. The minimalist who applies the philosophy broadly might become overly selective about social activities, declining invitations that don't meet carefully defined criteria for meaningful engagement. The principle of surrounding yourself only with what brings joy can become a filter so fine that it screens out opportunities for serendipity, growth, and the kind of messy, imperfect experiences that often prove surprisingly valuable. The minimalism paradox also manifests in the relationship between individual minimalism and family or community life. Minimalism is often practiced as an individual choice, but most people live in social contexts where others don't share their minimal aesthetic or organizational philosophy. The minimalist parent might struggle with children's natural tendency to accumulate toys, projects, and collections. The minimalist partner might create tension by pushing their aesthetic preferences onto shared spaces. The minimalist friend might seem judgmental about others' lifestyle choices, even when no judgment is intended. The personal practice of minimalism can create social friction that complicates rather than simplifies relationships. The work implications of the minimalism paradox add another dimension to consider. Many jobs require tools, resources, and materials that don't align with minimal living principles. The minimalist artist might struggle with the natural accumulation of supplies and works in progress. The minimalist craftsperson might feel conflict between their aesthetic philosophy and the practical demands of their trade. Even knowledge work can present challenges for the minimalist mindset. Should the minimalist writer keep research books that might someday prove useful, or eliminate them in favor of digital access that might not always be available? Should the minimalist consultant maintain a wardrobe that can handle diverse professional situations or risk being underdressed for unexpected opportunities? The minimalism paradox becomes particularly complex when we consider its relationship to privilege and access. True minimalism, the confidence that you can eliminate possessions knowing you can replace them if needed, requires a level of economic security that's not available to everyone. The person living paycheck to paycheck might keep extra clothes, tools, or household items not from attachment to stuff, but from rational concern about their ability to replace these items if circumstances change. The minimalist lifestyle that looks like freedom and intentionality from the outside might actually represent a form of privilege. The privilege of being able to own less because you have reliable access to more. The person who keeps only one warm coat might have the financial security to know they can buy another if it's lost, stolen, or damaged. The person with less economic security might rationally choose to keep several coats as insurance against unpredictable circumstances. This economic dimension of minimalism can create moral complexity around consumption and ownership that the philosophy doesn't always acknowledge. The minimalist eliminating possessions might feel virtuous about reducing consumption, while simultaneously relying on systems of production and access that enable their minimal lifestyle only because others are producing and maintaining the infrastructure of goods and services they can access when needed. The environmental claims of minimalism present their own paradoxes. Minimalists often frame their lifestyle as environmentally conscious, consuming less, buying higher quality items that last longer, reducing waste through thoughtful consumption. Yet the minimalist lifestyle can sometimes increase environmental impact through other channels. The minimalist who researches extensively before each purchase might drive to multiple stores, order items online only to return them, or replace items more frequently in pursuit of the perfect minimal solution. The environmental cost of this optimization process might exceed the environmental benefit of owning fewer items. The minimal lifestyle that appears environmentally virtuous might have a more complex environmental footprint than it initially suggests. The minimalism paradox also reveals itself in the relationship between minimalism and creativity. The practice is often promoted as a way to clear mental space for creative pursuits by reducing physical clutter and material distractions. The minimalist artist's sparse studio should provide more room for creative focus, more visual calm for artistic concentration. Yet some forms of creativity thrive on abundance, serendipity, and the unexpected combinations that emerge from having diverse materials and resources available. The artist with a cluttered studio full of random supplies might create connections and innovations that the minimal artist with perfectly curated tools would never discover. The writer surrounded by books might find inspiration in unexpected juxtapositions that the minimal writer with 3 carefully chosen volumes would miss. The question becomes whether creativity benefits more from the focused attention that minimalism provides or from the rich accidents that abundance enables. The answer likely depends on the individual and the type of creative work, but the assumption that less stuff automatically equals more creativity may be overly simplistic. As we reflect on the minimalism paradox, we might ask ourselves, what are we truly seeking when we embrace minimalism? Are we seeking freedom from stuff? Or are we seeking a different kind of control over our material environment? Are we trying to simplify our lives? Or are we trying to optimize them in ways that might ultimately create new complexities? The paradox doesn't suggest that minimalism is wrong or that conscious consumption is misguided. Rather, it invites us to examine the assumptions and promises of minimalism with the same critical eye we might bring to any lifestyle philosophy. It suggests that the benefits of minimalism, like the benefits of any approach to living, might be more nuanced and context-dependent than enthusiastic proponents sometimes claim. Perhaps the most honest approach to minimalism involves acknowledging its paradoxes rather than trying to resolve them. The practice might simultaneously simplify some aspects of life while complicating others. It might provide certain kinds of freedom while creating new kinds of constraints. It might serve some people beautifully while creating stress for others. The minimalism paradox invites us to consider whether the goal should be finding the perfect lifestyle formula or developing the wisdom to navigate the trade-offs and contradictions inherent in any intentional approach to living. It suggests that the most minimal approach might be to hold our lifestyle philosophies lightly, using them as tools when they serve us and setting them aside when they don't. The minimalism paradox whispers to us that perhaps the deepest simplification isn't about reducing possessions, but about reducing attachment. Not just attachment to things, but attachment to the identity of being someone who doesn't have attachments to things. It suggests that true freedom might come not from owning less, but from caring less about how much we own. Not from perfecting our relationship with stuff, but from relaxing our need to perfect anything at all. In the end, the most minimal wisdom might be this: every approach to living, including minimalism itself, contains its own contradictions and complications. The path to simplicity might not be about eliminating complexity, but about accepting it with grace, finding peace not in the perfect curation of our external environment, but in the gentle acknowledgement that life, in all its messy abundance, will always exceed our attempts to organize it into neat categories of essential and unnecessary, meaningful and meaningless, enough and too much.